Chapter 1572. Cultivation knew no time. Spring passed, summer passed, autumn came, and winter arrived at the end of autumn. The lush greenery that covered the mountains had already withered. Only the tenacious trees were still standing, no matter how the wind and rain battered them. A figure was strolling in the mountains as if he was taking a leisurely stroll in the backyard. He was leisurely and carefree, like the rolling clouds. The wind that blew past was ice-cold like a blade. It scraped against the face, causing a slight stinging sensation. The strolling figure suddenly stopped. He raised his head and saw white snowflakes drifting down from the gloomy sky. They filled the sky and covered the earth, boundless and endless. They were like fairies that descended from the sky, dancing between the heaven and earth. They fluttered under the biting cold winter wind. Chu-Mu extended his hand. A white snowflake quietly fell into his palm. It was a white sparkling snowflake that was chilling to the bone. With a slight tremble of his hand, the sparkling snowflake dissipated between the heaven and earth. More snowflakes fell from the sky, illuminating the mountains and plains in white. The heaven and earth were filled with snowflakes. It was snowing. This was the first time Chu-Mu had encountered snow since he came to the deep blue world. It was very rare. Standing on the mountain and looking at the falling snow, the heaven and earth seemed to be silent. Only the sound of the falling snowflakes could be heard. It became clear and gradually magnified in his ears, filling the entire world. Under the absolute silence, his origin spirit moved slightly. The power of the soul in his spiritual world was mobilized and spread out in a strange way. The power of the soul seemed to have turned into flowers, fusing with the snowflakes and spreading out. Starting from the surrounding snowflakes, the power of the soul spread further and further. It's snowing. When was the last time it snowed? It was about 50 years ago. Is this snow? It's my first time seeing it. It's quite nice. Not only was there snow falling in the True Sword sect, there was also snow falling in other places of the Kanglan Empire. The large amount of white snow was like fairies dancing between heaven and earth. It was everywhere in the mountains, forests, plains, and swamps. The snowfall this time was much larger than before. Not only did it cover the entire Kanglan Empire, but it even covered most of the surrounding regions. It could be said that it was the first time in several thousand years that such a large snowfall had occurred. The temperature was getting lower and lower. Ordinary people had no choice but to wear thick cotton-padded jackets to keep out the cold. Cultivators with lower cultivation bases could not help but feel the cold invading their bodies. They had to be prepared to keep out the cold, otherwise they might be affected. As for the cultivators with higher cultivation, they were still dressed in long robes. They were not afraid of the cold and the heat. The coldness brought by the falling snow was not enough to threaten them. In many places, children wearing thick cotton-padded jackets like wrapped rice dumplings were building snowmen and having snowball fight. They were having a great time. Some cultivators who practiced special cultivation methods also took the opportunity to practice without restraint. Snow had the power of snow. Normally, it would be difficult to comprehend the power of snow when cultivating techniques related to snow because it had been many years since it last snowed. However, it was different now. With such heavy snow, it brought about a clear and direct feeling, making it easier to comprehend. Under such heavy snow, many cultivators who cultivated snow cultivation methods and comprehended the power of snow all made great progress and became even stronger. In the heavy snow, two people were facing each other on a mountain peak. They were the two core disciples of the True Sword sect. Senior Brother Lin, the next move is a sword technique that I just comprehended. Please give me some pointers. The person on the left cupped his hands and said, Junior Brother is too polite. Come, said Senior Brother Lin on the right. Senior Brother Lin, this move of mine is called Sky Full of Snow. As soon as he finished speaking, he stabbed out with his sword. The sword pierced into the snow and seemed to be assimilated by the snow. It could not be seen or heard, only the sound of falling snow. Senior Brother Lin narrowed his eyes and stared straight ahead. In the falling snow, there seemed to be a sharp sword light flashing. In the end, it was only a newly developed sword technique. It was still rather crude. It seemed mysterious, but there were actually traces to be found. Under the sword light, snowflakes flew over. Each snowflake was like a sharp sword, bringing with it a terrifying sharpness that could cut through everything. Crude, barely half a move. Chu-Mu, who had merged his consciousness with the snowflakes, saw this scene. Unending river. Senior Brother Lin roared. The moment he stabbed out, the sword light burst out. In an instant, Senior Brother Lin had stabbed out countless times. Each strike brought with it a resplendent sword light, converging into a long river of sword light that surged endlessly. Under Chu-Mu's perception, all the mysteries of this move were clearly revealed. Unending River was a unique move that Senior Brother Lin had developed after studying the long river sword technique that Chu-Mu had created. He had combined the essence of the long river sword technique with his own understanding and many battles. This move was much more complete and powerful than the flying snow that he had created himself. The falling snow was torn apart by the unending river sword light, turning into fragments of snow that rolled back, sending the opponent flying. At the same time, it also created a vacuum. After a moment of pause, more snow fell and filled the vacuum. A snowflake is a sword. How many snowflakes is a sword? A figure stood silently in the snow. His sword was sheathed and his hand gripped the hilt. His eyes shone brightly. He was completely covered in snow, turning into a snowman. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths, 15 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, the melodious hum of a sword rang out in the silent world. It rippled outwards, and a ring of silver ripples seemed to spread outwards. Soon after, a sword stabbed out. The sword light dispersed, fusing into the falling snow and falling from the sky. Every snowflake possessed an astonishing sharpness, but the moment they landed, they dissipated into nothingness. This was because the snowflakes could not withstand the power of the sword. The power of the soul fused into the snowflakes, constantly spreading outwards. Very soon it enveloped the entire true sword sect. It continued to spread outwards, moving further and further away from the true sword sect. Everything that happened under the cover of the power of the soul was sensed by Chu-Mu. He could clearly see everything. The sudden snowfall gave Chu-Mu a different kind of insight. If I can make my power be like the snowflakes, boundless and omnipresent, the thought only flashed through Chu-Mu's mind. He knew that it was impossible. Perhaps only supreme experts, emperors, or even saint kings could achieve this. With a thought flashed through his head. Afterwards, Chu-Mu unleashed his sword domain. The sword domain was unleashed at full force. With Chu-Mu as the center, it covered a radius of 3,000 meters in the blink of an eye. The power of the sword domain was invisible. It could not be seen. It could only be felt. Under the sword domain, all the falling snow suddenly froze. Space seemed to freeze, and everything came to a standstill. Within a radius of 3,000 meters, there were countless falling snowflakes. They were suspended in midair as if they had been frozen. The scene looked very unique. Disperse! Chu-Mu called out. Within the sword domain, he was the ruler. With that, the frozen snowflakes in the air dispersed in the blink of an eye. They completely vanished, as if they had never appeared in the first place. An even stranger scene appeared. With Chu-Mu as the center, a 3,000-meter radius was completely empty. Yet, beyond that, there were countless snowflakes floating down. Soon after, Chu-Mu's mind moved, and the snow falling from the sky once again fell into the sword domain and froze. Chu-Mu analyzed the falling snow. His power of the soul fused into every single snowflake, comprehending its mysteries. The snow did not seem to possess any power, but it still possessed its mysteries. Chu-Mu's burst of inspiration made him try again. He wanted to see if he could guide sword intent and sword force into the falling snow and fuse it with the sword domain to strengthen it. The most basic sword domain only had the ability to weaken the opponent's strength and speed and increase his own strength and speed. Even if he cultivated it to the limit, it would not change. It would only weaken stronger enemies. However, the developed sword domain was different from the most basic sword domain. Now, Chu Mu was walking down the path of comprehending the sword domain to a higher level. The falling snow and the power in the sky transformed the power of the falling snow into a type of power within the sword domain, assisting the sword domain in attacking enemies within. He tried again and again, failing again and again. After failing, he summed up his shortcomings and continued to try, improving bit by bit. The eternal sword intent fused into the snowflakes. The eternal force made the snowflakes seem to have solidified, preventing them from melting. The sword intent increased the power of the snowflakes, making them as sharp as swords. Combined with sword origin and sword force, each snowflake seemed to have become a sword that had been tempered thousands of times. They possessed terrifying power. With Chu Mu's current ability, he could only create 100 snowflakes. Fall! With a low shout, as if it was the command of a ruler, the 100 snowflakes that contained astonishing sharpness and power seemed to have transformed into divine swords that fell from the sky. They stabbed towards Chu Mu as if they could slay gods and demons. Chu Mu wielded both swords. He directly used the sword style of the Akala. The moment he used the sword style, Chu Mu felt as if his feet had formed a close connection with the earth. Many arms grew out of his body. Each arm held a sword. As they swung, they defended against the 100 falling swords. These 100 swords were the product of the combination of Chu Mu's sword intent, sword origin, and sword force within the sword domain. They possessed great power. Every time he defended against them, he could feel a huge impact. When Chu Mu defended against all the 100 snowflake swords, small nicks appeared on one of the swords in his hands. This was an ordinary heavenly saint sword. It couldn't be compared to the eternal spirit sword, but it was still very hard and resilient. Under the snowflake swords there were nicks on it. It was enough to show that the snowflake sword's sharpness was very astonishing. Not bad power. I'll use it as the first form of the sword domain, Chu Mu thought. Chapter 1573. White, translucent snowflakes the size of goose feathers fell from the sky. They were densely packed, covering the entire sky. It covered the sky, covered the earth, covered the mountains and rivers, traversed through space and time, and descended. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, in the blink of an eye, 7 days had passed since the snow had descended. Not only did the falling snow not weaken due to the passage of time, it became even more intense instead. Between the heavens and the earth, it was a vast expanse of pure white. At a glance, it caused one to be unable to distinguish between the mountains, rivers, swamps, earth, and plains. There was only one kind of color, only one kind of sight. The true sword sect was not spared either. It was covered in white snow, but it did not melt. More than 3 meters of snow had accumulated. Perhaps snow was a very pleasing sight, especially to cultivators. The snow would not make them feel cold, and to a certain extent, it would even be beneficial to their cultivation. However, it was still very unbelievable that more than 3 meters of snow had accumulated. It felt like the ground had been increased by more than 3 meters. Everyone seemed to have become masters of movement techniques, leaving no traces behind as they stepped on the snow. The heavy snow had allowed the strength of many cultivators to clearly increase. Cultivators who cultivated in snow or ice cultivation methods, as well as those who comprehended the force of snow or force of ice, all benefited greatly from the snow. As for those who did not cultivate in any cultivation methods related to snow or ice, they also made significant breakthroughs in their resistance against the cold in a harsh environment due to the descent of the snow. The snow had created a group of cultivators, but it had harmed ordinary people. In a world, ordinary people were still the majority. Without ordinary people, where would there be cultivators? It could be said that almost all cultivators started off as ordinary people and walked towards strength step by step. Ordinary people did not have the tough physiques of cultivators, nor did they have the powerful vitality of cultivators. They did not have the great strength of cultivators, so they could only rely on stoves and cotton-padded jackets to resist the cold. They might have been able to do so in the beginning, but as time passed and the snow continued to fall, the coldness continued to accumulate. It became colder and colder. Some people had already frozen to death. It was foreseeable that the royal family of the Kanglan Empire had already reacted. They sent out troops to provide disaster relief and ensure the safety of the citizens. At the very least, they could let the citizens survive this heavy snow. At the same time, on the third day of the snowfall, Dynasty also informed all the sects and families to cooperate. The territory of the True Sword sect had already been given to the True Sword sect by the imperial family of the Kanglan Empire. It was under the jurisdiction of the True Sword sect. The ordinary people within its territory were all citizens of the True Sword sect, so their safety was naturally the responsibility of the True Sword sect. Therefore, on the second day of the snowfall, Chu Mu asked the disciples in charge of alchemy in the sect to refine the Fire Sun pill. This was a very low-level pill that was not very useful for cultivators, but it was suitable for ordinary people to consume. Consuming one pill would allow an ordinary person to resist the cold for 3 days. The Fire Sun pill was very low-level, so the spiritual herbs needed to refine it were very ordinary as well. As a result, in just a single day, all the disciples began to refine cauldron after cauldron of pills. Even the elders took action, refining 100,000 Fire Sun pills. There were far more than 100,000 ordinary people in the True Sword sect's territory, perhaps even 1 million. A mere 100,000 Fire Sun pills were naturally nowhere near enough. As a result, they continued to refine the pills after taking them out, working through the night. The disciples set off, bringing along groups of Fire Sun pills, winter clothing, and food. They distributed them to every household in the True Sword sect to ensure that they could survive this heavy snow. As there were not enough Fire Sun pills right now, they dissolved each pill in water and shared a bowl of water with a few people. Although the medicinal effects were greatly reduced, it was still enough to keep people warm for a day with winter clothing. At the same time, the disciples of the True Sword sect gathered the stronger ordinary people to shovel the snow and prevent the snow from crushing the houses. For the sake of survival and their families, these people naturally worked extremely hard. With the True Sword sect's prompt response, no ordinary people died. Even those who were sick were treated in time. On the 10th day, the heavy snow finally turned into light snow. The ground was covered in white, and the heavens and earth blended together. The True Sword sect's actions had united the hearts of the people in the True Sword sect's territory to the greatest extent. The effects of this could not be seen overnight, but would last for generations to come. On the 12th day, the snow finally stopped. The last snowflakes fell. Within the 3,000-meter sword domain, the eternal sword intent, divine wilderness sword essence, and sword energy caused the 300 snowflakes to tremble, as if they had been forged from metal. The edges of the snowflakes emitted a cold and sharp luster as they streaked across the air in mysterious trajectories. Compared to the first day, the snowflakes had increased from 100 to 300. The trajectories of the snowflakes had changed from rough and straight to mysterious trajectories, and they were even more powerful. Without an opponent, Chu Mu used himself as the opponent. Within the sword domain, he controlled the 300 snowflakes to attack himself, and then used the Akalanatha sword style or the Thousand Willow sword style to defend himself. Both his offensive and defensive methods had been improved. Chu Mu had already comprehended the essence of the Akalanatha sword style and the Thousand Willow sword style, and he was gradually deepening it. What he regretted was that the first form of the sword domain consumed too much energy. He had to use the power of his soul to guide the sword intent, sword essence, and sword energy into the snowflakes. The lack of direct contact was a problem in itself. After succeeding, he had to consider the additional consumption of energy. If he strengthened his control, it would further increase the consumption of the power of his soul. After infusing the snowflakes, he still had to use the power of his soul to guide the three types of energy and fuse them together to unleash the power they should possess. As a result, with the current level of Chu Mu's soul and the power of his soul, as well as his other powers, he could only support 2 snowflakes like this. However, if his soul broke through from the peak of the second level to the third level, the number of snowflakes he could use would increase to 4 at the very least. The last snowflake fell. The gloomy sky was still, as if it had yet to return to its sunny state. Right now, it was covered in white snow as far as the eye could see. The mountains and earth had merged into one, and it was difficult to tell them apart. If it wasn't for the falling snow, Chu Mu's gaze was distant as an attempt from a few days ago flashed through his mind. The first form of the sword domain was considered an offensive form. It was even more powerful than an ordinary sword domain. Chu Mu had comprehended the first form of the sword domain from the falling snow. However, snowfall in the deep blue world was very rare. Sometimes it would only happen once every few decades or at least once every few years. Even if it happened once every few months, it would not last for too long. Could it be that without the falling snow, Chu Mu's first form of the sword domain would be useless? No, that was not the case. The first form of the sword domain that he comprehended from the falling snow was essentially a medium. Falling snow was a type of medium. It was the medium used to fuse sword intent, sword origin, and sword energy together to unleash its power. Chu Mu's experiment a few days ago was to forcefully fuse sword intent, sword origin, and sword energy together without a medium using his powerful soul power. The final result was that he barely managed to condense 100 snowflake blades. Every snowflake blade appeared rather rough and unstable. Furthermore, the attacks they launched were only rough and straight lines. The power was evidently very limited. In addition, Chu Mu's soul was completely drained in just one attempt. He felt a little dizzy. Medium. Standing on the peak of the snowy mountain, Chu Mu began to ponder. Not everything could be used as a medium. This required particular attention. Using the power of the soul to control the medium, if the medium was too heavy, it would increase the consumption of the power of the soul. If the medium was too light, it would be difficult to unleash its full power. One also had to consider the hardness and toughness of the medium. Snowflakes were actually not a very good medium. Although the snowflake's weight was suitable, they did not possess much hardness and toughness. The power they could unleash was extremely limited. However, the shape of snowflakes was very suitable. After pondering, Chu Mu decided to cast a batch of metal snowflakes based on the shape of snowflakes. As a medium, it would come in handy when he displayed the first form of the sword realm. After making this decision, Chu Mu's figure flashed and disappeared from the peak. In another flash, he appeared in the sect leader's hall. Immediately, Chu Mu's eyes narrowed. A cold light shot out and landed on the sect leader's seat. There was a golden rectangle erected there. He reached out and grabbed it. The golden rectangle automatically flew up at a strange speed. It was extremely fast and its edges were incomparably sharp. It spun and sliced, tearing the sky apart. It attacked Chu Mu as if it was being controlled by an invisible person. This attack was extremely fast. The power it carried was extremely sharp, causing Chu Mu's pupils to contract in an instant. Chu Mu extended his sword finger and pointed forward. The space seemed to ripple. The golden rectangle suddenly stopped. Its power was directly destroyed by Chu Mu's sword finger. Chu Mu clenched his hands and immediately caught it. The remaining power caused Chu Mu's fingers to tremble. This power was shockingly at the level of a 5-star saint. If Chu Mu had only advanced by 1 star, he would have died without a doubt. The golden rectangle that was bigger than a palm was actually a post. On the front of the post, there was a slightly protruding word. Battle. When he saw that word, he immediately felt an intense battle intent rush towards him. It attacked Chu Mu's mind, but he was unable to move it at all because it was not strong enough. The Battle King sect. They've finally come, muttered Chu Mu as he opened the post. Order the True Sword sect to prepare within 3 days. After 3 days, the Battle King sect's envoy will come to receive them. The True Sword sect will become one of the Battle King sect's branches. The content was short and direct. At the end of the post were the 3 words Battle King sect. What big words! 3 days. Then let's see what kind of strength the Battle King sect has to say such arrogant words, muttered Chu Mu as he gathered the True Sword sect's elders. Chapter 1574. In a dazzling and luxurious palace, a burly man sat at the head of the table. His eyes shone brightly, and his aura was oppressive. He wore a pure golden robe that shone with golden light. Frost Ice Sect, Volcano Sect, True Sword Sect. The muscular man in the golden robe spoke. His voice was deep, like the roar of a tiger. This time, we've sent out 10 invitations. 6 will be sent to third-rate sects, and 4 will be sent to quasi-second-rate sections. Prepare yourselves and go to these sects and clans to receive them. If anyone refuses to submit, understood. Below him stood a row of people who were also wearing golden robes. The golden robes of this group of people were not as bright and resplendent. There was a circle on the back of each robe, and within the circle, there was a large silver word, battle. After bowing, the group of people in golden robes left the palace. Only the muscular man in the golden robe remained. He raised his head and looked out of the palace. His gaze was domineering, as if he was looking down on the world. 3 days was actually a short time. It was over after a bit of cultivation. 3 days ago, Chu Mu showed the invitations sent by the Battle King sect to the elders. After reading it, the elders were furious. The Battle King sect's words were too arrogant. It was as if they didn't put the True Sword sect in their eyes at all. Another point was that the invitations were placed on the sect leader's seat in the sect leader's hall. The invitations were sent by the Battle King sect to show off their strength to the True Sword sect. They did this on purpose to make the True Sword sect think that they were unfathomable and had extraordinary means. In reality, this was a form of provocation. The elders didn't go into seclusion. On the 3rd day, they all gathered in the sect leader's hall to wait for the Battle King sect's envoy. The 7 great elders that originally belonged to the True Sword sect, as well as the newly promoted elders Yun Feng and Yun He, made a total of 9. Aside from that, there were also the 4 saints that Chu Mu had enslaved. The first one was Yang Zhen, a sage with ordinary talent who had relied on luck to pass the Yonic tribulation. After a few years, his cultivation base was still at the early first sky of the Yonic realm. Over the past few years, Yang Zhen had wholeheartedly focused on cultivating his swordsmanship. He had started from the most basic swordsmanship of the True Sword sect and gradually improved. With the guidance of the True Sword sect's Sword Saint elders and his perception as a saint-level expert, he had comprehended the essence of swordsmanship and grasped level 1 sword force. A few years was a short period of time. Comprehending the essence of swordsmanship and grasping level 1 sword force seemed very fast, but one couldn't forget that Yang Zhen was a saint-level expert. Even a saint-level expert with ordinary talent wouldn't be lacking in perception due to their primordial spirit. Moreover, he had been cultivating in a sword cultivation sect like the True Sword sect for a few years. Due to the influence of the environment and the guidance of the Sword Saint elders, he could sometimes save several years of cultivation time with just one guidance. Although the effects of multiple guidance were not so obvious every time, it was still equivalent to saving him several decades of cultivation time. Finally, it was time to cultivate the True Sword sect's swordsmanship. The swordsmanship that Chu Mu had created had to be improved from the lowest level. Step by step, he had to deepen his comprehension and grasp of the swordsmanship. Finally, he had to comprehend the essence of the swordsmanship and grasp level 1 sword force. Not a single one of these 3 steps could be missing. If an ordinary saint-level expert didn't have these conditions, they would need at least a few decades to comprehend the essence of the swordsmanship and grasp level 1 sword force. However, Yang Zhen's talent was very ordinary in the end. It would be very difficult for him to go further on the path of the sword. Perhaps he would only grasp level 3 sword force in his entire life. Other than Yang Zhen, there were the 5-star sword Saint Merlin, the 3-star sword Saint Wenfei, and Long Yi. The 4 of them were Chu Mu's servants and didn't hold the position of elder of the true sword sect. Chu Mu planned to make other arrangements. However, the 4 of them were sword saints, so they were naturally part of the upper echelon of the true sword sect. Furthermore, they were extremely loyal and had the right to sit in the sect hall with the other elders. They also enjoyed the cultivation of the profound Yang sword world. The 9 elders in Yang Zhen's group made up a total of 13 saint-level experts. Chu Mu hadn't arrived yet. At this moment, 2 golden figures charged toward the sect hall like streaks of light. They ignored everything and charged straight toward the sect hall. Their powerful auras weren't concealed at all. They were the first to arrive, alarming the disciples of the true sword sect as well as the elders in the sect hall. Who is it? Who is so arrogant to be so unbridled in the sect? The disciples were shocked and began to discuss among themselves. Their gazes followed the golden streaks of light toward the sect hall. How dare you? The great elder was enraged. He instantly released the aura of a peak 6-star saint. Like an erupting volcano, the aura condensed and vaguely formed an invisible giant sword. It slashed toward the 2 streaks of light that were charging toward him. The collision of the auras caused an earth-shattering boom that sounded like countless thunderbolts. An incomparably violent aura spread out, shocking the disciples of the true sword sect. The aura released by the golden streaks of light let everyone know that they were also 6-star saint. Furthermore, they were at the late stage of 6-star saint. With their cooperation, they were actually able to resist the great elder's aura. An astonishing battle intent gushed out from the golden streaks of light. The 2 auras merged into one and pierced forward like a heaven-shaking divine spear. The golden streaks of light followed closely behind the heaven-shaking divine spear. They directly charged into the sect hall and landed on the ground. Ha 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 ha, as expected of the great elder of the true sword sect. Your strength is indeed extraordinary. As soon as the golden figures landed, a man and a woman appeared. The man had a rough appearance and was laughing loudly. I don't think so. Your strength is only at the peak of 6-star saint level, yet you can't stop us. We are at the late stage of 6-star saint level. It can only be considered ordinary. The woman in the golden robe was tall and slender. Her black hair was coiled up. Her eyes were slightly long and narrow. Her cheekbones were slightly protruding and her lips were thin. At first glance, she gave off a sharp and unkind feeling. The words that she said reflected the feeling that she gave off. Whether it is ordinary or extraordinary, you will know once you try. The great elder said in a deep voice. His hair and beard fluttered without wind. His aura continued to rise. An astonishing sharpness surged from his body. It was as if it had turned into a sword, a world-shaking sword. It locked onto the man and woman in the golden robe. Immediately, their faces turned serious and they were on full alert. Wait, we are not here to fight, the man in the golden robe said. Facing the great elder's attack, he still had some strength left. It meant that although his cultivation was a small level lower than the great elder's, his strength was extraordinary. 3 days ago, you received the golden invitation of our sect. Now, offer up the treasure of our sect and become a branch of our sect, the woman in the golden robe said in a sharp voice. Otherwise, the consequences are not something you can bear. As soon as the woman in the golden robe said that, all the saints of the True Sword sect were infuriated. They were all members of the True Sword sect, the upper echelons of the True Sword sect. They also had a strong sense of belonging to the True Sword sect. They were bound together for good or ill. The woman in the golden robe and her attitude were incomparably arrogant. She didn't put the True Sword sect in her eyes at all. Boom, boom, boom. Powerful chi burst out from the saints of the True Sword sect and soared into the sky. The main hall of the True Sword sect trembled in an instant. The two envoys of the Battle King sect's expression changed abruptly. They gathered their strength and prepared to deal with the attack at any time. Then tell me, what kind of unbearable consequences are you talking about? Said a calm voice. That voice seemed to contain some kind of magical power. Instantly, the furious saints of the True Sword sect retracted their chi. Greetings, sect master. All the saints turned around and bowed respectfully with their swords. In the empty seat of the sect head, a person had appeared and was currently seated on it. Early first heavenly layer of the Aeon. Your Chumu, the sect master of the True Sword sect. The man and woman in the golden robe turned and looked at Chumu. Sharp light shot out of their eyes, as if they wanted to see through Chumu's entire body. It's rumored that you once killed a 2-star saint with your Nirvana cultivation base. Now that you're only a 1-star saint, you should be able to kill a 3-star saint. You can be considered a monstrous genius. Our sect has always welcomed monstrous geniuses. After the True Sword sect becomes our branch, you have two choices, said the man in the golden robe. Said the man in the golden robe as if he was telling the truth. The first choice is to continue leading the True Sword Hall and become the leader of the True Sword Hall. The second choice is to join the Battle King sect and become a disciple. You will receive the best training and enjoy the best resources. With your talent, your future is limitless. Even the name has been changed. Chumu smiled faintly. True Sword Sect, True Sword Hall. This Battle King sect was really bold. It seems like you still don't understand how strong our sect is. The woman in the golden robe curled her lips. She said in a mocking tone, Our sect has an extraordinary background and is extremely powerful. It's your honor to be chosen as a branch of our sect. If you don't want to, the Lin family, Xianjin sect, Blazing Sword sect, and other quasi-second-rate forces are examples of the True Sword sect. Hall Master Chu, we're not trying to scare you. We really do have the strength. The man in the golden robe smiled and said loudly, To the Battle King sect, no matter if it's a third-rate force, quasi-second-rate force, or even a second-rate force, they're nothing. Even if it's a first-rate force, we don't fear them. As long as you join the Battle King sect, your future is limitless. I wonder which expert is the Battle King sect's sect master? The opponent's big talk didn't make Chumu angry. Instead, he calmly asked a question. Wait until Hall Master Chu follows us to the Battle King sect. The man in the golden robe smiled and said, We all know that the True Sword sect has some connections with the True God Sword sect from thousands of years ago. I'm sure the True Sword sect wants to regain the glory of the True God Sword sect. As long as you join the Battle King sect, it won't be long. Go back and tell the Battle King sect's sect master that the True Sword sect and the Battle King sect will mind our own business. Chumu replied. Chapter 1575. Outside the main hall of the True Sword sect, the disciples all gathered and looked in the direction of the sect master's peak. The two golden streams of light that did not conceal their auras made them realize that something was wrong. They vaguely felt that something was about to happen. The higher a cultivator's cultivation base was, the clearer their intuition towards danger was. Even though they didn't know what was going on, they felt a sense of dread in their hearts. In the main hall, the atmosphere was extremely tense, as if swords were about to be drawn at any moment. Sect Leader Chu, I've studied your information. I've always felt that even though you're tough, you're a wise sect leader. The golden-robed man's eyebrows twitched as if they were about to rise. His expression became cold, and his tone became frosty as well. You're the master of a sect. Any decision you make will affect the prosperity or decline of a sect, as well as the survival or death of tens of thousands of disciples in a sect. Don't make a single wrong decision and cause the foundation of the True Sword sect to be destroyed overnight, resulting in the deaths of tens of thousands of disciples in the True Sword sect. The man in golden robes' voice became more and more severe, as if he was reprimanding his subordinates. Chumu frowned. The people of the Battle King sect were too self-righteous. They really thought that the True Sword sect was their branch, and the people of the True Sword sect were their subordinates. They could scold and order them around as they pleased. My True Sword sect is founded on the sword. We believe in the Tao of the sword. We believe in being like a sword. We can bend and break, but we don't fear power. If you want to behave atrociously, I'm afraid you've come to the wrong place. Chumu suddenly stood up and straightened his back. His body was as straight as a sword as he pointed towards the sky. His aura was imposing as he soared into the sky. His eyes were filled with a sharp glint and sword intent. He went straight for the two envoys of the Battle King sect. Elders, listen to my orders. Capture these two. Yes. The great elder and the others shouted in unison. They had long found the two men in golden robes unpleasant to the eye. A powerful chi burst out. In the main hall, sword light flickered, dazzling and resplendent. A shocking sword intent surged, as if countless swords were colliding. Sparks flew in the air. The expressions of the two envoys from the Battle King sect changed drastically. They immediately used all their strength to retreat and rush out of the main hall. Although the two of them were late-stage 6-star saints and believed they were no weaker than regular peak 6-star saints, there were a total of 13 saints in the main hall of the True Sword sect. One of them was a peak 6-star saint who had been immersed in the way of the sword for thousands of years. Compared to them, his strength could only be greater. Moreover, there was an early-stage 6-star saint rank sword saint, and the others were 5-star saint rank, 4-star saint rank, 3-star saint rank, and so on and so forth. Just that peak 6-star saint rank sword saint was sufficient to fight the two of them. If the other sword saints were included, then they were utterly incapable of going against them head-on. Although they were arrogant, the people of the War King sect were not brainless. Before they came, they had already done their research on the True Sword sect. They knew almost everything about the True Sword sect, so they were naturally on guard. In the blink of an eye, 2 streaks of golden light shot out of the sect's main hall. Immediately after, the True Sword sect's saints chased after them. More than 10 rays of light flashed across the sky. Their powerful aura shook the surroundings. "Thieves, don't run!" shouted the great elder furiously. His years of cultivation did not diminish his vigor and vitality. He raised his sword and slashed down. A huge sword light rose up like a sun, bringing with it an incomparably shocking power as it attacked the two envoys of the War King sect. The terrifying sword intent brought about a terrifying pressure. The expressions of the two envoys from the Battle King sect changed drastically. No wonder he was a sword saint who had been immersed in sword cultivation for thousands of years. Although his talent was ordinary, his foundation was extremely solid. He had a shocking level of attainment in sword cultivation. The two envoys of the War King sect attacked one after another. Their chi soared into the sky. A golden sword appeared in each of their hands. They looked extremely powerful and domineering. They raised their swords and slashed down. 2 huge golden sword lights shot out. Immediately after, the two of them reached out their hands. Golden light condensed in the center of their palms and shot out. It was extremely powerful. Its power was even more powerful than the golden sword light. The people of the War King sect cultivated the sword as well as other things. Most of them were not sword cultivators, but they were still extremely powerful. When they collided, an incomparably shocking energy wave spread out in all directions. Using the energy wave, the two envoys of the War King's sect quickly retreated and escaped. Don't chase any more. Chu Mu also flew over. He didn't explode with his full speed. He only maintained the level of a 3-star saint. Hearing Chu Mu's words, the elders all stopped. The reason why he told the elders to stop chasing was because Chu Mu had his own plans. The two envoys of the War King sect were 6-star late-stage saints. Their strength wouldn't be any weaker than an ordinary peak 6-star saint. It was extremely difficult to capture them because the Great Elder and the other's strength wouldn't be able to suppress them. Once a real battle broke out, it would definitely cause unnecessary damage to the True Sword sect. It might even cause a large number of disciples to die. It wasn't difficult either. Chu Mu only needed to equip the Heavenly Puppet. With the Heavenly Puppet's strength, it could easily capture the two envoys of the War King sect. However, Chu Mu didn't plan to do that. The two envoys of the War King sect wouldn't give up after leaving this time. Next time, it wouldn't just be the two of them. According to the information gathered by Elder Yunfeng, the War King sect wasn't an easy sect to deal with. Any sect that refused to submit to the War King sect, regardless of whether they were third-rate or quasi-second-rate, were all destroyed by the War King sect. This time, the True Sword sect had directly refused to submit to the Battle King sect. The Battle King sect definitely wouldn't let this go. Therefore, Chu Mu had the two envoys of the Battle King sect leave alive to give them a false impression that the True Sword sect's strength was only so. Otherwise, if the two of them were left alive, the Battle King sect would raise the threat level of the True Sword sect and send even more experts. When the time came, the War King sect would send a large force to take revenge. Under the circumstances of underestimating the True Sword sect's strength, it would be like throwing meat buns at a dog. Either they didn't do it, or they would be more direct. In the blink of an eye, the two envoys of the War King sect rushed out of the True Sword sect's mountain gate. The formation of the True Sword sect hadn't been activated yet, so they could come and go as they pleased. People of the True Sword sect, listen up. Because of your sect leader's stupid decision, the True Sword sect has become the enemy of the War King sect. Soon, the True Sword sect will be destroyed. You better take advantage of the time before the experts of the War King sect arrive and leave the True Sword sect. Otherwise, only death awaits you, shouted the golden-robed man. The sharp and unkind golden-robed woman didn't say anything. Instead, she used her long and narrow eyes to sweep across the mountain gate of the True Sword sect and the disciples of the True Sword sect. The disdain in her eyes was extremely clear, and those with poor temperament would immediately go crazy. A hint of ridicule hung on her harsh lips. This golden-robed woman used her expression to explain what it meant to attract hatred. If you want to fight, then fight. No need to talk nonsense. Chu Mu's voice resounded. All right, let's see if you can still be so stubborn when the time comes. The golden-robed man said angrily. The golden-robed woman's fierce gaze was as sharp as a knife. She glanced at Chu Mu's face as if she wanted to dig out a piece of his flesh. Then, the two of them turned around and turned into two rays of golden light, quickly leaving. Their departure wasn't the end, but the beginning. Sect leader, the people of the War King sect are too arrogant, said the third elder in the main hall of the sect. It doesn't matter whether they are arrogant or not. We need to prepare. Soon, the people of the War King sect will come again, said the second elder. We don't know the background and details of the War King sect. This is a disadvantage. Chu Mu said, however, the War King sect doesn't know much about the True Sword sect either. So, when the time comes, we will give them a big surprise. Sect leader, apart from us, does the True Sword sect have any external help? Asked the fourth elder. The other elders also had inquisitive looks on their faces. From what they knew, the entire True Sword sect only had 14 saint-rank experts, including the sect master. Including the other 3 guest elders, there were only 17. Among them, 7 were still 1-star saints. Although Chu Mu wasn't a normal 1-star saint rank, He was probably equivalent to a 3-star saint rank. The strongest of them all, the Great Elder, was only at the peak of 6-star saint. As for the radiant sword Saint Xiaojinkong, although he was a 7-star saint, he wasn't an elder of the true sword sect. He was only a guest elder and was far away in another region. It would take more than a month to notify him and then rush back. The War King sect wouldn't give the true sword sect that much time. Could it be that they had to ask for help from the Kanglan royal family? That wasn't a good idea, but it was better than being destroyed by the War King sect as a last resort. Elders, there's no need to waste time guessing. You will know when the time comes. Chu Mu smiled mysteriously. Even if the War King sect sends out a 9-star saint, we won't be afraid. Hearing this, everyone's hearts trembled. Currently, the True Sword sect didn't even have a single 7-star saint, let alone a 9-star saint that was many times stronger than a 7-star saint. In their place, a 9-star saint was simply an invincible existence that could destroy them with a single breath. They didn't understand where the sect leader's confidence came from, but Chu Mu's tone and demeanor didn't seem like he was joking. Everyone suddenly realized something. Could it be that Chu Mu had obtained other opportunities in the ancient sacred city that could allow him to resist a 9-star saint? With this thought in mind, the elders heaved a sigh of relief. All right, elders, there's no need to think too much. What will come will come, Chu Mu said as he looked outside the main hall. Moreover, this is also an opportunity. Elders, you can spread the news of the War King sect and praise their strength. This is a chance to test whether the disciples are truly loyal to the sect. In addition, send down a strict order. Any disciple who leaves the True Sword sect is not allowed to spread the True Sword sect's sword technique. Otherwise, we will investigate and kill without mercy. Chapter 1576. Within the True Sword sect, discussions were everywhere. If they can destroy a second-rate force so easily, then wouldn't the Battle King sect be able to destroy our True Sword sect easily? What should we do? When Chu Mu told the elders to secretly praise the great Battle King sect and spread the news of the Battle King sect's tyrannical way of doing things, as well as stating that the disciples had the freedom to choose whether to live and die with the True Sword sect or leave the True Sword sect, the disciples were all shocked and had their own thoughts. I want to leave the True Sword sect, a God-congealing realm disciple said. What do you mean by that? You usually enjoy all the resources of the sect, but when the sect is in trouble, you want to leave? Despicable. Someone reprimanded. I'm the hope of my family. If I die, my family might not be able to recover. So, I can't die. I want to leave too. A second person said. Senior Brotherly, let's go together. Since I joined the True Sword sect and became its disciple, my life has been closely related to the True Sword sect. If you want to leave, you can leave. I'll stay. However, from now on, you and I have nothing to do with each other. Take care of yourself. Among the inner disciples, elite disciples, and even core disciples, there were some who were shaken and chose to leave. The Battle King sect was simply too powerful. They could even destroy second-rate forces, let alone a quasi-second-rate force like the True Sword sect. There was simply no way to resist them. Once the Battle King sect launched a large-scale invasion, what awaited the True Sword sect was likely to be annihilated. Naturally, the Battle King sect would also be annihilated. No one wanted to die, especially when they couldn't resist at all. It was the most depressing thing. Some disciples made their choice and left the True Sword sect. However, they were also quite worried that the True Sword sect would not allow them to leave. In order to survive, 2 of them carefully walked out of the True Sword sect without any obstructions. Behind them, a large group of people looked at them, all of them feeling incredibly nervous. No one stopped them. Let's try again. After walking out of the sect, the 2 continued forward. Their speed was getting faster and faster, and they were getting further and further away from the True Sword sect. Not long after, the 2 figures disappeared before everyone's eyes. They're fine. Let's go. The group of people who were watching from inside the sect immediately shouted happily. They all gathered their strength and rushed out of the sect in the blink of an eye. A group of traitors. These people deserve to die. The disciples who didn't leave looked at the people who left coldly. They were furious. To think that I thought of him as a good brother. I didn't expect him to be such a person at such a critical moment. A friend in need is a friend indeed. Loyalty and righteousness are only known in life and death. That kind of person is not qualified to be with us. It's good that he left. Everyone, I actually have an idea. One of the core disciples suddenly said, I'm afraid that those who leave now will soon regret what they did today. That's right. They are a bunch of vile people. They were groomed by the sect but abandoned the sect at a critical moment. Even if people like them are still alive, they will be condemned by their conscience day and night. No, that's not what I meant. My guess is that the Battle King sect's strength and their large-scale invasion is true. However, our True Sword sect is not completely powerless. The core disciple's eyes lit up, and his tone gradually became more certain. This time, it is very likely that this is a test for the sect. When the sect is facing a life and death crisis, how many people are truly loyal to the sect? If what you said is true, then those who leave now will lose the opportunity to be groomed by the sect. They will definitely regret it. I hope so. I sincerely hope so. In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed. On the first day, the disciples only discussed and didn't do anything. It wasn't until the second day that some people decided to leave. On the third day, some people finally left the True Sword sect. Some people took the lead and weren't stopped. Nothing unexpected happened. The rest of the people who were planning to leave all left. Today was the fourth day. The disciples who hadn't left yet were those who felt a sense of belonging to the True Sword sect. They wanted to stay and advance with the True Sword sect. In just 3 days, the True Sword sect experienced an unforeseen event. However, the effect of this event wasn't too great. It didn't affect the outside world. It was controlled within the True Sword sect. Therefore, the outside world didn't know about this yet. However, the disciples who left would spread the news sooner or later. In the main hall of the sect, Chu Mu sat at the head of the table. Sect Master, a total of 1,300 inner disciples have left the sect. 350 elite disciples have left. A total of 123 core disciples have left, reported Yang Zhen. Yang Zhen was currently the weakest of the saints in the True Sword sect. He couldn't even compare to Yun Feng and Yun He, who had just undergone the Aeon Tribulation. Yang Zhen wasn't an elder of the True Sword sect. Chu Mu had given him the authority to supervise the True Sword sect, so he was naturally in charge of the statistics. Over 1,700 people have left. Chu Mu narrowed his eyes and gently tapped the back of his chair. Put these people on the blacklist. After the incident with the Battle King sect, these people and anyone related to them will never be allowed to enter the True Sword sect. Kill all violators. Among the 1,700 disciples who had left the True Sword sect, there were some with some background. Yes. Yang Zhen was Chu Mu's servant. He had been forced to submit to Chu Mu from the very beginning. He obeyed everything Chu Mu said. After the 1,700 disciples left the sect, the news began to spread. The True Sword sect has rejected the recruitment of the Battle King sect. They will face destruction. As soon as the news spread, it immediately caused quite a stir. In the past few years, the True Sword sect had developed very quickly. They were in the limelight, and there was basically no one in the entire Kanglan Empire who didn't know about them. There were people who envied them, and there were even more people who were jealous. If it weren't for the fact that there seemed to be a Saint King behind the True Sword sect, there would have been people who would have moved against them long ago. The Kanglan imperial family would never have tried to befriend the True Sword sect. However, the Battle King sect had suddenly appeared with a mysterious background. They gave off a very domineering feeling. As soon as they appeared, they started conquering everywhere. By now, there were already several dozen third-rate and quasi-second-rate organizations that had submitted to them. The Battle King's sect's strength had increased by a lot. Just think about it. The Battle King's sect was already suspected to be a second-rate organization. Now that several dozen third-rate and quasi-second-rate organizations had submitted to them, the Battle King's sect's strength had increased by several times. The strange thing was that the quasi-first-rate and first-rate organizations didn't do anything. It was as if they didn't know about this, or as if they knew but didn't want to care. Even the Kanglan imperial family didn't do anything. How could the Kanglan imperial family not know about such a huge commotion in the Kanglan Empire? They definitely knew, but they didn't care or didn't want to care for some reason. Right now, the mysterious Battle King sect was about to clash with the True Sword sect that seemed to have some background. Who would win and who would lose? If the two sides fought, would even more secrets be exposed? For example, the origins of the Battle King sect, whether the True Sword sect really had the Heavenly Sword Saint as their backer, and so on. However, the majority of the public opinion still leaned towards the True Sword sect being unable to defeat the Battle King sect. On the 5th day, the disciples were all cultivating. It seemed like nothing had changed, but that was impossible. The atmosphere was somewhat stifling, as if a storm was about to come. On the 6th day, the atmosphere became even more stifling, making people feel uncomfortable. Before an unknown danger arrived, it was the most unbearable. Moreover, everything was just a guess. Whether the True Sword sect could resist the Battle King sect was still unknown. If they couldn't resist, they would be destroyed, and only death would await them. On the 7th day, Chu Mu let the 10 esoteric disciples spread the news to appease the disciples. The news clearly stated that the True Sword sect didn't fear the Battle King sect. As for whether they could understand it, it was up to the disciples themselves. On the 8th day, the 2 3-star sword saints that Chu Mu had sent out to patrol, Long Yi and Wenfei, came back with news. In front, many flying ships were rapidly approaching, and inside the ships were saint-level experts. They're finally here. Chu Mu's eyes lit up when he received the news. He immediately gathered the elders. The elders had also been waiting for this day to come, and all of them had made their preparations. Therefore, when they heard Chu Mu's news, they immediately rushed over. "Elders, let's arrange the disciples. We'll meet the enemy outside the sect," said Chu Mu. Arranging the disciples was to prevent any fish from escaping the net, or perhaps some saint-level expert would secretly attack the disciples, causing unnecessary casualties. It had to be known that the disciples who dared to stay behind to live and die with the True Sword sect were those who truly felt a sense of belonging to the sect. They were disciples worth nurturing, and they couldn't afford to lose them. As for meeting the enemy outside the sect, it was because they didn't want to cause any damage to the sect. A battle between saint-level experts would cause huge fluctuations, and the power was shocking. It could easily shatter a mountain. Unless they weren't confident in winning, they wouldn't lead the enemy into the sect and activate the grand formation. Moving quickly, after Chu Mu gave the order, everything was quickly arranged. With Chu Mu in the lead, there were 9 elders and 4 servants of Chu Mu. A total of 14 saint-level experts flew up and quickly flew out of the sect. As for Gu Wankong and the other 2, they didn't appear. They were still somewhere in the True Sword sect, waiting for an opportunity. The Warlord sect is coming. Can the sect leader and the others fight back? I believe in the sect leader. They definitely can. The gathered disciples all looked up at the sky in the distance. They looked at the 14 figures in the sky outside the mountain gate and spoke one after another. Damn it. If I had the strength of a saint-level expert, I wouldn't have to hide here. A core disciple clenched his fist and said angrily, "Work hard and cultivate. One day we can also fight for the survival of the sect," said a esoteric disciple coldly. Chapter 1577. One after another, flying ships flew over rapidly from afar. Every flying ship had a different appearance. This was a fleet of flying ships. Flying at the very front was a dazzling and luxurious flying ship. It was about 100 meters long and was shaped like a shuttle. The flying ship was covered in strange patterns. It looked very advanced. There was a circle on the side of the flying ship, and within the circle was a large battle character. It was the flying ship of the Battle Monarch sect. 1, 2, 3, a total of several dozen flying ships headed in the direction of the True Sword sect. Each flying ship gave off a cold aura that was shocking. Each flying ship represents a faction. 58 flying ships. Aside from the flying ships of the Battle Monarch sect, the other 57 are the flying ships of the third-rate and quasi-second-rate factions that the Battle Monarch sect has subdued. In the past, the Battle Monarch sect would not send out too many people. This time, however, they've sent out the experts of their own faction and all the factions that have submitted to them. It looks like they're planning to display their full strength. The True Sword sect has been in the limelight recently. It's the perfect time to strike. Many saints followed from the left and right. They came from various factions, and there were also experts from the Kanglin royal family. They wanted to personally witness the battle that was about to begin. In the sky above the True Sword sect, Chu Mu led a dozen saints to stand in the air. They looked ahead, waiting for the arrival of their powerful enemies. Suddenly, black shadows appeared in front of them. There were dozens of them. Those black shadows rapidly grew larger and larger as they rapidly approached them. "Sect Master, they're here," said the second elder. His eyes glinted. "There are 58 flying ships in total. Even if each flying ship only has one saint, there are still 58 saints," said the third elder in a low voice. Clearly, there was a great disparity between the two factions. On the True Sword sect side, there were only 14 saint rank experts. Including Chu Mu, there were 4 one-star saints. The difference in strength between them and the opponent was huge. Moreover, it was still unknown whether there was only one saint-level expert in each flying ship. The possibility was relatively small. Perhaps they would be facing over 100 saint-level experts. Among them, there would be low-level saint-level experts, and there would definitely be mid-level saint-level experts. As for whether there would be any high-level saint-level experts, that was unknown. Even if there weren't any high-level martial saints, just these mid-level and low-level martial saints were enough to crush a dozen martial saints. Among the crowd, only Chu Mu's expression remained the same, as if what was about to arrive was not a strong enemy, but a group of chickens and dogs. Seeing Chu Mu's expression, the elders who were originally solemn heaved a sigh of relief. In their impression, the sect master was tough, but he was not a reckless person. He must have a trump card, and that trump card was enough to deal with the incoming strong enemy. Every single flying ship was extremely fast. They had originally been tiny black dots, but now, after just a few short exchanges, a complete silhouette appeared before everyone's eyes. A shocking pressure seemed to sweep over everyone. This battle concerns the life and death of our True Sword sect. Perhaps the True Sword sect will truly rise, but the True Sword sect will become history. Chu Mu spoke unhurriedly. This was the truth. When it came from Chu Mu's mouth, it sounded so normal. However, when everyone heard it, their expressions became solemn. "Don't worry, sect master. Ever since I became a disciple of the True Sword sect several thousand years ago, my life has always belonged to the True Sword sect. Whoever wants to touch the True Sword sect will have to face my sword first," said the first elder solemnly. The other elders all nodded. When it came to feelings for the True Sword sect, no one was as deep as them. It's necessary to use our full strength, but there's no need to be so pessimistic. Unless the Battle King sect sends out a large number of high-level saints or a supreme expert, we'll definitely win, said Chu Mu. Shocking battle intent gradually surged in the depths of his eyes. 58 flying ships lined up in a row, descending from the sky in an imposing manner. Afterwards, the flying ships stopped one by one. The doors opened and figures flew out one after another. 2 figures, one male and one female, flew out of the leading golden flying ship. 2 figures flew out from each of the other flying ship. There were 2 people on each ship, so a total of 116 people flew out from the 58 ship. Every single one of them was a saint, and they all radiated with powerful auras. The 114 saints were led by the 2 golden-robed men and women from the Battle King sect. They quickly flew towards Chu Mu's group. The 2 golden-robed men and women from the Battle King sect were the 2 who had come to accept the True Sword sect's offer. Earlier, they had fled from the swords of the True Sword sect's elders. Now that they had returned, they sneered. "I've already said that only destruction awaits if you don't submit. True Sword sect, your end is here," said the golden-robed man coldly. "Of course, you still have one last chance. As long as you kneel right now and kowtow to us 3 times, and shout that the True Sword sect has submitted to the Battle King sect and will follow the Battle King sect's lead in the future, we'll spare your worthless lives." The golden-robed woman's voice was just as harsh as before. The other saints were all expressionless. They were all saints from other organizations who had submitted to the Battle King sect through force. They did not submit to the Battle King sect from the bottom of their hearts, so they did not agree with the golden-robed man and woman's words. However, they had to listen to them, or their families and friends within their organizations would suffer. "Draw your swords," said Chu Mu indifferently. His voice was extremely forceful, making everyone's hearts tremble. The melodious sounds of sword light immediately rang out. Like meteors streaking across the sky, they moved in unison as if they had practiced this thousands of times. They all pointed forward. The swords of the saints of the True Sword sect were perfectly straight as they pointed forward. Their neat movements and unstoppable momentum made all the disciples of the True Sword sect extremely excited. Their blood began to boil. "I want to fight as well. I want to become stronger. I want to become a saint. I want to fight for the sect." The disciples were all encouraged, and they made up their minds to become even more determined. In the distance, many figures hovered in the air and looked over. They were from other organizations. They did not belong to the Battle King sect, nor did they belong to the True Sword sect. 100 people against 14 people. It's not even a fraction. This time, the True Sword sect is finished. The difference in numbers is too great. Although the Battle King sect does not have any high-level saints, they have 3 peak 6-star saints. Moreover, the 2 envoys of the Battle King sect are at the late stage of the 6-star saints. Their strength is comparable to an ordinary peak 6-star saints, so they have 5 of them. On the other hand, the True Sword sect only has 1 peak 6-star saint, and 4 of them are early-stage 1-star saints. Unless the True Sword sect really has some kind of trump card, they will not be able to escape this time, said a saint who analyzed the situation logically. "You still want to resist? It seems like you really want to be exterminated," said the golden-robed woman sharply. "You think you can stop the Battle King sect with just a dozen pieces of trash? Kill!" shouted the golden-robed man. Then, a powerful energy surged from their bodies. There were more than 100 saints. Among them, 30 were mid-level saints. The rest were all low-level saints. As their auras surged, the sky changed color and the energy of heaven and earth surged. The saints of the True Sword sect were shocked. Strike first and gain the upper hand. The saints of the True Sword sect had already mobilized their sword origin before their opponents had even begun to attack. They used powerful sword techniques and slashed out without holding back at all. In an instant, dazzling, cold, and resplendent sword light tore through the sky. The sword light was like the scorching sun, the waning moon, the rolling thunder, the crumbling of mountains, the surging of rivers. Different sword sages and different sword techniques were displayed at this moment. So that's how that move should be used. I understand now. The disciples outside the True Sword sect watched. A small portion of them seemed to have understood something. It was easy to tell if an expert was skilled or not. As soon as the sword saints of the true sword sect attacked, their powerful sword moves and terrifying sword lights caused the expressions of the 100 or so saints to change abruptly. "Disperse!" roared the golden-robed man. Golden light bloomed from his body as a powerful aura surged. His battle intent was shocking. "I refuse to believe that a dozen pieces of trash like you can defeat us. Kill them all. Leave no one alive." The golden-robed woman's voice was sharp and furious. "Kill them all, then kill all the disciples of the sect. Leave no one alive." The two cultivators from the Battle King sect were the first to attack. They released a gigantic ball of golden light, which contained a destructive power. It whistled through the air as it shot towards the Battle King sect. Immediately after, the other saints also attacked. They were all expressionless before, but they didn't show any mercy when they attacked. Speaking of which, they didn't have any enmity with the True Sword sect, nor did they have any conflicts of interest. However, because they had submitted to the Battle King sect and belonged to their faction, the True Sword sect was the Battle King sect's enemy. In other words, they were their enemy. Every saint had matured through countless life and death situations. They all understood that they had to be cruel to their enemies. They couldn't show any mercy, or they would be cruel to themselves. Since the saints of the True Sword sect had been identified as their enemy, they wouldn't show any mercy, even if there was a great disparity in numbers. In just a single exchange, the attacks of the True Sword sect's sword saints were all destroyed. A portion of the powerful light blasted over, tearing through the sky. It was as if mountains were collapsing and the earth was cracking. Thunder rumbled, and the might was extremely shocking. The entire sky was filled with energy of various colors. The yuan qi of the world was extremely chaotic, and the power of all sorts of laws was drawn in. From afar, the sky seemed to be torn apart, about to shatter. It was filled with terrifying ripples of destruction. Chapter 1578. Amidst the countless energy attacks, Chu Mu's eyes lit up and he grasped the trajectory of each energy beam. His body swayed left and right as he easily dodged each attack. On the other hand, the others didn't have this ability. They could only use their swords to block the attacks while dodging. In one collision, a dozen saints of the True Sword sect were sent flying by the terrifying impact of energy. Their blood and qi were in turmoil. If they hadn't cultivated in the profound Yang Sword Hall for a period of time, their blood and qi would have been vigorous and their physiques stronger. Otherwise, the impact would have made them vomit blood. A mantis trying to stop a chariot. The golden-robed man from the Battle King sect didn't immediately attack again. Instead, he revealed a disdainful expression. In his eyes, the True Sword sect wasn't a threat at all. If he wanted to destroy them, it would be as easy as flipping his palm. The disciples of the True Sword sect stared with their eyes wide open. Their breathing was rapid and their blood was in turmoil. They unconsciously clenched their fists. They wanted nothing more than to fight the enemy on behalf of the elders. Everyone could see that the True Sword sect was powerless to fight against the Battle King sect. If nothing unexpected happened, the True Sword sect was finished. Apart from Chu Mu, the other 13 people of the True Sword sect were all pushed back. The weaker ones had their blood and qi surging. Their faces were pale and they were slightly injured. The difference in strength was too great. "Even if I die, I'll drag a few of you down with me." The Grand Elder had a fiery temper in his early years. After many years of cultivation, his temper had improved. However, he would still explode at the critical moment. Powerful energy surged in his body. Sword energy surged like a tide. An astonishing sharpness soared into the sky from the Grand Elder's body. The wind and clouds in the sky changed. As the yuan qi of the world gathered, it formed a vortex that slowly rotated. The center of the vortex seemed to be penetrated by an invisible force. The Grand Elder's aura grew stronger and stronger. It actually surpassed the peak of the 6-star Saint Realm and showed signs of reaching the 7-star Saint Realm. "Stop him!" the golden-robed man from the Battle King sect roared. If the Grand Elder really broke through, even if he was just a 7-star saint, he would be able to crush them. This was because the 7-star saint realm was a high-level saint realm. There was a huge gap between them and the 7-star saint realm. The others from the True Sword sect were startled. They immediately rushed out to protect the Great Elder. The people from the Battle King sect also understood that if they allowed the other party to break through successfully, the result would be different. They had to interrupt the other party and kill him to prevent future troubles. At this moment, Chu Mu, who hadn't made a move until now, made his move. His body seemed to tremble slightly, and an invisible force spread out in an instant, covering an area of 3,000 meters. More than 100 saints from the Battle King sect and more than a dozen from the True Sword sect were all covered by it. What happened? The people from the War King sect were startled. Most of them felt that their powers were being suppressed. It was as if there were invisible restraints on their bodies. It was extremely uncomfortable. Only those 6-star martial saints circulated their essence force and immediately broke the bindings. They were unaffected. A few days ago there was a heavy snowfall. I gained some enlightenment. Chu Mu opened his mouth and spoke in a neither fast nor slow manner. His appearance was as if he was chatting idly with someone, and not the slightest trace of nervousness or desolation could be seen from him. It has been perfected over the past few days. Today, I invite everyone to take a look at it. I shall name it Snowkill Sword Domain. Sect leader is so cool. Some of the female disciples' eyes lit up. One day, I want to be like the sect master. Some of the male disciples were looking forward to it. Facing over 100 Saint Realm experts, Zhang Xian showed no fear at all. His tone was calm, as if he didn't care about the other party at all. This kind of attitude and magnanimity was truly admirable. Of course, only the people from the True Sword sect were impressed. The people from the Battle King sect were furious. How pretentious! Some of the people watching from afar curled their lips in disdain. At this time, snow-white patches appeared around Chu Mu. They looked like snowflakes that surrounded Chu Mu. There were more than 300 of them, like fairies dancing between heaven and earth. Then, a gust of wind blew past, blowing 300 snow-white pieces of chi towards the Battle King sect's saints without the slightest trace of smoke or fire. This is the so-called Snowkill Sword Domain. Are you here to put on a show to please us? The golden-robed man sneered. He stretched out his hand and clapped. His palm instantly enlarged and overflowed with golden light. A strong gust of wind blasted towards the snow-white patches. The snow-white patches were very light. Under the attack, it was as if they were blown away by the wind. They floated to the side without any damage. Then watch my performance. Chu Mu was not angry at all. He said indifferently. Then, an extremely bright light flashed in his eyes. It was as if a treasured sword had been unsheathed. It was so dazzling that many Saint Realm experts couldn't help but close their eyes or cover their eyes with their hand. His primordial spirit, which was at the pinnacle of level 2, released a powerful spiritual power. He instantly guided the Eternal Sword Will, the Divine Wilderness Sword Energy, and the Level 9 Sword Energy into each snow-white piece. In an instant, each snow-white piece flashed with a touch of light. It was a threatening edge. Everyone realized that the snow-white patches, which were originally light and weightless, now had a unique metallic texture. They were guided by spiritual energy and controlled by spiritual energy. Snowkill, with a soft sound, all the martial saints within the sword domain felt as if a gust of cold wind had blown past. Those who were weaker, such as the low-level martial saints and the 4-star martial saints, felt their bodies involuntarily shiver, as if they had suddenly arrived at a place where ice and snow had fallen. Only the 5-star and 6-star martial saints were able to resist it. As the 300 snow-white flakes fluttered in the air, they trembled and an incomparably sharp luster flashed across them. The light snow-white flakes shook their bodies and became sharp and hard. In an instant, they streaked through the air in Chu Mu's sword domain and shot towards each of the Battle King Sect's sacred rank experts. The 300 snow-white patches covered the 116 people on the other side. Insignificant trick. The golden-robed man from the Battle King Sect sneered. He raised his palm and slammed it heavily. The sound of wind and thunder surged and golden light whistled. With a loud bang, the 3 snow-white patches that shot towards the golden-robed man were shattered by the golden palm. After all, the golden-robed man was an expert at the peak of the 6-star Saint realm. Chu Mu's strength was not enough to fight against him. The moment the 6-star Saint realm expert attacked, the snow-white patches turned into white dots and dissipated. The 5-star Saints attacked, but they were not as direct as the 6-star Saints. Instead, the snow-white patches dodged them like butterflies fluttering in the wind. The 4-star Saint level experts and those below the 4-star Saint level all attacked one after another in an attempt to shatter the snow-white light. However, they all failed. The power contained within the snow-white light was not something they could resist at all. Their attacks were directly torn apart when they clashed head-on. Even the low-level Saint Realm experts did not have time to react. They only saw the snow-white patches flash past their eyes. Following that, they felt a tearing pain from their necks and between their eyebrows, spreading throughout their bodies. Every snow-white cloud that flew past the 4-star Martial Saints and low-level Martial Saints would leave behind a trail of scarlet blood. The red and white patches reflected each other. In the eyes of the crowd, it looked so demonic. This time, the Battle King Sect had mobilized a total of 116 Saints. Among them, there were more than 30 mid-level Saints. The rest were low-level Saints. Among the 30 mid-level Saints, there were 15 4-star Saints, 10 5-star Saints, and 8 6-star Saints. Chu Mu's single attack had killed 15 4-star Saints and 70 to 80 low-level Saints in one fell swoop. Only 10 5-star Saints and 8 6-star Saints were left. Everything happened too quickly. In the instant that the 6-star Saints attacked and the 5-star Saints resisted the snow-white patches, the 4-star Saints and low-level Saints had their necks or between their eyebrows torn apart by the snow-white patches. What's going on? Those people are all dead? In the distance, the group of Saints who were watching from the sidelines were dumbfounded. This was impossible. This didn't conform to the rules. It wasn't impossible for someone to kill dozens, hundreds, or even thousands of people in an instant. For example, a Saint-level expert could easily kill a large group of Nirvana realm experts in an instant, and killing tens of thousands of Divine Condensation realm experts with a single strike was also possible, so it wasn't strange at all. However, that was based on the situation where the difference in cultivation was obviously too great. In terms of cultivation base, Chu Mu was indeed much weaker than those Saints who had died. However, this difference was because Chu Mu was weaker than them. Chu Mu's cultivation base was very clear. He was only at the early first heavenly layer of the Aeon realm. Those Saints who had died were at least at the late second heavenly layer of the Aeon realm. The difference in cultivation base between them was one major realm and two minor realms. Alright, it was rumored that the sect master of the True Sword sect, Chu Mu, was a super genius, a monstrous genius. He had once killed a 2-star Saint with his Nirvana realm cultivation base. As a 1-star Saint, it wasn't impossible for him to fight against a 3-star Saint. However, among the 100 Saints who had died, there were not only 2-star Saints, but there were also 3-star Saints, and even 4-star Saints. Killing a 2-star Saint in an instant was shocking. Killing a 3-star Saint in an instant was shocking. But what was going on with killing a 4-star Saint in an instant? A 1-star Saint in the early first level could kill a group of 4-star Saints, as well as a large group of 3-star Saints and 2-star Saints. Was this world crazy? The Battle King Sect's Saints who were still alive finally reacted. Looking at the bodies that were falling down like dumplings, they were indescribably shocked. On the True Sword sect's side, the dozen or so Saints had their mouths agape. Their eyes bulged as their minds froze. The disciples of the True Sword sect were all petrified, unable to move. What they had seen with their own eyes just now was truly a dream. Chapter 1579. Outside the True Sword sect, corpses were strewn about in various postures. They were all the corpses of the saints who had been killed earlier. Even their souls had dispersed. Actually, Chu Mu really wanted to take their yuan spirits and use the great art of soul ignition to make his heavenly puppets grow quickly. Unfortunately, he couldn't do that in front of so many people. Otherwise, the True Sword sect wouldn't just have to face the Battle King sect. There would also be other powers watching from the sidelines. Those quasi-first-rate, and even super-first-rate powers wouldn't turn a blind eye to it. At that time, the True Sword sect would truly be annihilated. Even the Heavenly Sword Saint wouldn't be able to help. Chu Mu was very clear on which was more important. They're all dead. The two envoys from the Battle King sect felt like their heads were about to explode. They were about to go crazy. With just one strike, he had killed nearly 100 Saint-level experts. Although these people weren't Saint-level experts trained by the Battle King sect, they were still Saint-level experts who had been recruited by the Battle King sect. They had strengthened the Battle King sect's strength and reputation. Their deaths meant that the Battle King sect's strength was weakened. Most importantly, when the two of them had reported to the sect master, they had promised that they would exterminate the True Sword sect without losing a single soldier before setting off with this group of Saint-level powerhouses. The Battle King sect had analyzed the True Sword sect, taking into account all kinds of possibilities. They had analyzed the strength of the True Sword sect's experts, which was why they were confident that with over 100 saints working together, even the True Sword sect's saints wouldn't be able to kill them. Instead, they would be killed. However, the result was unexpected. It was completely unexpected. The sect master of the True Sword sect, who was only a 1-star early-stage saint, was actually able to kill a 4-star saint instantly. Chu Mu's shocking strength was mainly in Ancient Sacred City. However, Ancient Sacred City was huge. Those who were dead didn't bring any news out. Those who were alive didn't know what Chu Mu was. Some didn't even know his name. The intact snow-white object flew towards Chu Mu and circled around him once before disappearing. The Snow Slaughter Sword domain only had this much strength at the moment. If he attacked a second time, Chu Mu's spiritual energy would be almost completely depleted. It would not be beneficial for the following battle. However, even if Chu Mu had the power to launch a second attack without affecting himself, he would not use it. Now that his opponent was on guard, it would be difficult to kill a 5-star martial saint, and it would be impossible to kill a 6-star martial saint. Even so, the first strike of the Snowkill Sword realm had shocked countless people. At that moment, Chu Mu's figure and his fluttering snow-white robes entered everyone's eyes and were deeply imprinted in their minds. "You must die, you must die." The golden-robed man from the Battle King sect stared at Chu Mu with bloodshot eyes. His breathing was rapid like a bull's as he stared fiercely at Chu Mu. His scarlet eyes were like that of an enraged beast, filled with terrifying killing intent. Chu Mu's body tensed up as a chill attacked him. He circulated his sword energy and dispelled the chill. His expression did not change, but his energy was mobilized. The Sword God's descent secret technique was about to explode at any moment. Behind him, the Great Elder's aura was getting stronger and stronger. The whirlpool in the sky was getting stronger and more obvious, bringing with it a dark pressure. His Snow Slaughter Sword domain cannot deal with us. Attack, leave no one alive. The golden-robed woman shrieked. The Battle King sect still had 8 6-star saints and 10 5-star saints left. Whether it was in terms of numbers or strength, they were superior to the True Sword sect. "You all have no chance," Chu Mu said softly. Then, he waved his sleeve and black figures rushed out, spreading out in the surroundings. 1 figure, 2 figures, 3 figures, those black figures were not humans. Instead, they were huge, black metal puppets. Every single one of them gave off an icy aura. It was shocking. There were a total of 27 puppets lined up in a row. Suddenly, the gloomy eyes of the 27 puppets flashed with a bright light. A powerful aura immediately spread out from the puppets' bodies. Among them, there were 12 puppets that gave off ripples of aura that let people know that they had the power of a 3-star saint. 9 of the puppets gave off ripples of aura that reached the level of a 4-star saint, while 6 of the puppets gave off ripples of aura that reached the level of a 5-star saint. The sudden change made everyone jump in fright. Then, they clearly sensed the auras of the 27 puppets. The people of the Battle King sect let out a sigh of relief and smiled. Even though there were 27 of them, the strongest among them was only a 5-star saint. On the other hand, the weakest among them was a 5-star saint, while the strongest among them was a 6-star saint at the pinnacle. They weren't even on the same level. Very good. I'll take these puppets. The golden-robed man from the Battle King sect was overjoyed. The attack on the True Sword sect this time had unexpectedly resulted in the loss of close to 100 4-star saints and low-level saints. Even if they managed to destroy the True Sword sect, they would definitely be punished when they returned. If they could bring these 27 puppets back to make up for their mistakes, not only would they not be punished, they might even be rewarded. After all, the weakest of the 27 puppets was 3-star saints, while the strongest was 5-star saints. They were much stronger than the dead saint. If that's the case, then take them. Chu Mu said indifferently. The puppets began to move, moving rapidly in the air. Saint-level puppets were the same as saint-level experts. They could fly. The 12 3-star saint-level puppets instantly changed positions and charged towards the 5-star saint-level powerhouse at an astonishing speed. The 9 4-star saint-level puppets also activated and charged towards the 5-star saint-level powerhouse at an even faster speed. Finally, the 6 5-star saint-level puppets turned into 6 streaks of black light and shot towards the 6-star saint-level powerhouse in an arc. The 12 3-star saint-level puppets formed a level 3 puppet formation. The 9 4-star saint-level puppets formed a level 4 puppet formation. The 6 5-star saint-level puppets formed a level 5 puppet formation. Formation! These puppets actually know how to form formations. The knowledgeable martial saints felt their hearts skip a beat, and the corners of their eyes twitched uncontrollably. A strong sense of foreboding welled up in their hearts, as if something bad was about to happen. In an instant, the 4 5-star martial saints were surrounded by the level 3 puppet array. The 6 5-star martial saints were also surrounded by the level 4 puppet array. The 8 6-star martial saints were also trapped by the level 5 puppet array. The moment they entered the puppet formation, the expressions of the Battle King sect's saints changed drastically. They felt a terrifying pressure coming from the puppets that surrounded them. It was as if the puppets were a perfect whole, without any flaws. In an instant, the remaining 18 5-star saints and 6-star saints of the Battle King sect were all surrounded by the puppet. They were trapped by the puppets. When the level 3 puppet formation was activated, the 12 3-star saint-level puppets' strength merged into one, increasing each other's strength. When they attacked with their swords, the strength of each attack reached the 5-star saint level. The 4 5-star saints' expressions changed drastically as they hurriedly tried to defend themselves. The speed at which the puppets drew their swords was not slow. Under the coordination of the 12 swords, they slashed out continuously. Every strike was a threat to them. As for the counterattacks of the 4 5-star martial saints, when they hit the puppets, they were instantly deflected and dispersed. Only 1/12 of their power actually hit the puppet. The bodies of the puppets were originally very strong. They were 100 times, 1,000 times stronger than the bodies of humans. When the strength of the puppets was divided into 1/12 of their strength, it was impossible to cause any damage to them unless they had the strength of a 6-star saint-level saint. In an instant, the 4 5-star martial saints were trapped and unable to break free. They could only hold on bitterly. They didn't understand the structure of these puppets and didn't have the same ability as Chu Mu. On the other side, the 6 5-star Saint level powerhouses who were surrounded by the level 4 puppets were terrified. They realized that the power of every sword attack from the puppets had exceeded the 5-star Saint level. It had reached the 6-star Saint level. Every sword attack made them feel a sense of fatal danger. The 6 5-star martial saints worked together and unleashed all of their power. They unleashed a secret technique that boosted their strength and fought against the level 4 puppet formation. In the last area, the 8 6-star saints who were surrounded by the level 5 puppet formation were horrified. The powerful 7-star saint level energy waves kept attacking their minds like endless waves. The difference in strength between a middle saint level and a high saint level caused their limbs to go numb and their thoughts to become sluggish. They were horrified and hurriedly unleashed their secret techniques with all their might. Under the amplification of the level 5 puppet formation, the 6 5-star saint level puppets unleashed their swords at the same time. The 5-star saint level puppets focused on speed. Their swords were extremely fast, like 6 streaks of black light streaking across the sky, filling the level 5 puppet formation. The power of each sword attack had reached the 7-star saint level. The 6-star saint level powerhouses tried their best to dodge and defend, but the difference in strength between a 6-star saint and a 7-star saint was too big. 3 6-star saint level powerhouses couldn't resist at all. Their bodies were torn apart in one slash. 2 6-star saint level powerhouses from the Battle King sect were trembling violently. Their bodies were lacerated and blood spurted out like fountains. The 3 6-star saint level powerhouses, who were at the peak of the 6-star saint level powerhouses, barely managed to defend against the sword attack. Their bodies were trembling violently and their faces were pale. They were injured. As long as the puppets didn't run out of energy, as long as their core wasn't destroyed, and as long as their master didn't give the order to stop, they would continue attacking. When the second sword attack was unleashed, the remaining 3 6-star saint level powerhouses couldn't withstand it anymore. They couldn't even self-detonate and were killed instantly. The blood-curdling screams were incomparably shrill as they spread out in all directions, causing everyone to shudder and feel inexplicably horrified. Chapter 1580. 11 and 12 brought so many people out. Isn't that too much? In a side hall of the warlord sect, a person was lying lazily on a golden fur-covered bench. His eyes were half closed, as if he was about to fall asleep. His long hair covered half of his face, giving off a demonic feeling. Old 3, do you think 11 and 12 can compare to you? Not far away, a burly man wearing a golden robe sat. He looked like a golden iron tower. Just by sitting there, he gave off a strong sense of pressure. 11 and 12 did this to ensure that nothing goes wrong. After all, the True Sword sect has risen very quickly, and we don't know if they have any trump cards. Also, we can show the strength of the warlord sect to other sections. It will be helpful for us to conquer other sects in the future. Alright, you can think about this. Old 3 shook his finger and said lazily. Old 3, you're too lazy. Otherwise, you wouldn't be stuck at the peak of the 6-star saint level. The burly man said helplessly. My cultivation is different from yours. Old 3 said. The Tao of the primordial spirit is indeed different from ours. The burly man shook his head. They're all dead. This is simply unbelievable. Outside the gates of the True Sword sect, the saints who were watching from afar were all in a daze as they mumbled to themselves. This was completely different from what they had imagined. Although they had some guesses that the True Sword sect might have some unknown method to defend against the Warlord sect's attack, they definitely didn't expect it to be like this. It could be said that the sect master of the True Sword sect alone was enough to deal with the 100 saints of the Warlord sect. Of those 3 puppet arrays, the 5-star saint level 1 is comparable to a 7-star saint level expert. The True Sword sect is actually so strong that they can be ranked as a second-rate sect. The Warlord sect has kicked an iron plate this time. All sorts of discussions were going on. Chu Mu swept his gaze over. His sharp gaze caused the distant sacred rank experts to dodge, not daring to look him in the eye. The sharpness was too strong. The puppets flew towards Chu Mu after killing the enemy. Chu Mu waved his sleeve and collected all the puppets. Yang Zhen, collect the spoils of war. Don't let their corpses go either, Chu Mu said. Spoils of war usually referred to spatial rings. The collection of every saint rank expert should not be too bad. The spatial rings of over 100 saint rank experts would definitely enrich the cultivation resources of the True Sword sect by a lot. As for the corpse, Chu Mu planned to bring it into the profound Yang Sword realm to feed the ancient spirit beast. Humans ate spirit beasts, and spirit beasts ate humans. It was very normal. The body of a saint expert had already surpassed the level of mortals, and was constructed from energy. It was extraordinary, and to ancient spirit beasts it was a tonic. If it wasn't for the fact that they were of the same race, it was very awkward for humans to eat each other. They would be despised and even killed. Perhaps there would also be people who would eat the flesh of saint experts to replenish themselves and cultivate. Yang Zhen, Yun Feng, and Yun He immediately took action. They burst out at full speed and dived down. Wherever they passed, the corpses of the saints of death would disappear, collected by them. The great elder's aura stagnated. It didn't continue to rise, but slowly fell instead. It couldn't be helped. His rage was only aimed at the saint rank experts of the Warlord sect. However, Chu Mu had repeatedly used strange moves to wipe out all the saints of the Warlord sect, leaving him with no target to target. Coupled with the shock in his heart, his breakthrough was cut short. This was also good. That kind of breakthrough was like walking on a tightrope with a bottomless abyss below. The probability of crossing it was very low, not even 1 in 10,000. After all, forcefully advancing under anger was burning one's own potential. It wasn't a breakthrough after consolidating one's foundation, and had a huge drawback. Only 1 in 10,000 could cross it. Moreover, after crossing it, one's potential would be damaged, and they would be stuck at the early stage of the 7-star saint realm for the rest of their lives. However, if the Great Elder had successfully broken through, even if he was only at the early stage of the 7-star saint realm, he would be able to contend against the 100 saints of the Warlord sect. The probability of 1 in 10,000 was indeed very low, but no one could guarantee that they would encounter that 1 in 10,000. After wiping out the enemies and collecting the spoils of war, Chu Mu and the others returned to the True Sword sect. They went straight to the main hall of the sect. We won. Sect Master is too strong. He killed nearly 100 saints in one strike, and he also has such a powerful puppet. Our True Sword sect's strength is much stronger than what we know. The disciples of the True Sword sect were discussing spiritedly. Their faces were flushed red from the excitement. Their blood was flowing faster, and their hands were trembling uncontrollably. The battle just now was too shocking for them. It was a challenge to their nerves. Those who left will definitely regret it. That's right, they will definitely regret it. However, there's no medicine for regret in this world. While the disciples were all excited, they were also very disdainful of those who left the True Sword sect in the face of danger. Now that the True Sword sect had displayed its strength, they were very excited, and their sense of belonging grew even stronger. Sect Master, I didn't expect you to be so strong, the second elder said in a daze. However, his eyes grew brighter and brighter. It's the True Sword sect's great fortune to have you as the sect master. Originally, they only thought that Chu Mu, as a 1-star saint, would at most be able to fight or even defeat a 3-star saint. However, the reality was completely beyond their imagination. A 3-star saint was killed instantly, and even a 4-star saint was killed instantly. Everyone stared at Chu Mu with burning eyes. It was as if they wanted to see through Chu Mu. Chu Mu only laughed. He didn't reveal his true strength. If the elders knew that his true strength was able to kill a 5-star saint rank, and if he used secret techniques and other methods, he would be able to kill a peak 5-star saint rank and contend against a normal 6-star saint rank. They would probably faint. That would be too shocking. Elders, after today's battle, you all understand that the sect's strength on the surface is not enough to fight against the Battle King sect. Chu Mu said. However, this is also because our true sword sect has just risen. Although we've developed rapidly in the past few years, we still don't have enough time. After today's battle, the Battle King sect won't let this matter rest. The next time they come, they will definitely send stronger people. However, after this loss, the Battle King sect probably won't send more people over so quickly. They will first investigate our true sword sect's strength. Sect Master released 27 puppets and 3 puppet formations. The strongest one has the strength of a 7-star saint. However, there's only one of them. If the Battle King sect also sends out a 6-star saint and a 7-star saint, I'm afraid we won't be able to resist, the third elder said worriedly. Elders, you don't have to worry about this. The puppets I brought back can form the strongest puppet formation. It's comparable to an 8-star saint, Chu Mu said. An 8-star saint. The elder's eyes widened in shock. There was only a 1-star difference between an 8-star saint and a 7-star saint, but there was a huge difference. An organization with an 8-star saint could be considered a quasi-first-rate organization, while an organization with a 9-star saint could be considered a first-rate organization. If an organization had a peerless expert, it would be considered a super first-rate organization. In the current world, Saint Kings had all gone into seclusion. The organizations they created were also super first-rate organizations. However, they were different from ordinary super first-rate organizations. They were called sacred grounds. The 3 puppets guarding the spiritual pool all have the strength of a 6-star saint. The puppet formation they form is comparable to an 8-star saint, Chu Mu said. He hadn't told the elders that he had set up a 6-star puppet formation to guard the spiritual pool. Now that he said it, the elders were shocked. As it turned out, there was an 8-star saint within the True Sword sect. Although it could only be counted as one, it was still very powerful. Right now, the True Sword sect's situation was rather special. They could only be considered a quasi-second-rate organization, but because they had 8-star saint puppets, they could be considered a quasi-first-rate organization. Of course, compared to a true quasi-first-rate organization, the True Sword sect only had 8-star saint puppet. Everything else was very weak and couldn't be compared. However, compared to a quasi-second-rate organization, the True Sword sect was an incomparably powerful existence. When they heard Chu Mu's words and learned that the 3 6-star saint puppets guarding the spiritual pool could form a puppet formation comparable to an 8-star saint, they all let out a sigh of relief. They felt that the Battle King sect was very powerful, but they shouldn't have an 8-star saint. Otherwise, the Battle King sect would have the strength of a quasi-first-rate organization. Not only would they attack third-rate and quasi-second-rate organizations, they wouldn't even let second-rate organizations off. Up until now, they hadn't heard of the Battle King sect attacking a second-rate organization. This gave them the impression that the Battle King sect was only a second-rate organization. However, their origins were mysterious. Perhaps they had some powerful backing. Sect Master, with this change, I feel that the time needed to break through has shortened, the Great Elder said. The aura around his body fluctuated, appearing very unstable. This was the result of taking a risk to break through in anger. It was hard to say whether the Great Elder's situation was a blessing or a curse. It would depend on his own fortune. Great Elder, go to the profound Yang Sword Hall and cultivate in seclusion. Chu Mu said. Yes, Sect Master. I will consolidate and break through as soon as possible. As long as I have the strength of a 7-star saint, I won't need to fear the Battle King sect. the great elder said. According to the current situation, as long as he had the strength of a 7-star saint, he wouldn't need to fear the Battle King sect. However, the truth was still unclear. There was still hope. Great Elder, there's no need to be anxious. Breaking through to the higher stage of the saint realm is also very dangerous. Nourish your Yuan spirit first, and let your Yuan spirit break through before breaking through to the next level. It's more reliable. Chumu said. The great elder bowed and bid farewell. He quickly headed to the profound Yang Sword Hall. In the outside world, the news of the true sword sect's strength quickly spread. Chapter 1581. In the world of cultivators, news spread like wildfire. In just a day, all the sects in the Tsonglan dynasty knew what had happened. They knew that the Battle King sect had sent out 116 martial saints to attack the True Sword sect, and the True Sword sect had sent out 14 martial saints. In the end, the True Sword sect hadn't lost a single martial saint, while the Battle King sect had lost all their martial saints. The Battle King sect has lost all their martial saints. Got it? There's nothing strange about it, it's within our expectations. That was the first reaction many people had when they heard the news. Then, they jumped to their feet and widened their eyes. Say that again. It's not that the True Sword sect was annihilated, it's that the Battle King sect sent out over 100 martial saints that died. What about the True Sword sect? What about the True Sword sect? The True Sword sect didn't lose a single martial saint. That's impossible. That's impossible. Is the news true? I saw it with my own eyes. When those who didn't see the battle with their own eyes heard the news, their first reaction was disbelief. The Battle King sect had sent out over 100 martial saints, while the True Sword sect had only sent out 14 martial saints. The difference in numbers was 10 times. Neither side had a single high-level martial saint, and the strongest was a peak 6-star martial saint. The Battle King sect had 5 martial saints, while the True Sword sect only had 1. It was obvious who was stronger and who was weaker. The True Sword sect had overturned everyone's opinion. In the main hall of the Ancient Mirror sect, everyone from the sect master to the elders was present. How did the True Sword sect kill over 100 martial saints from the Battle King sect? It's hard to believe without seeing it with my own eyes. The sect master of the True Sword sect is at the early stage of the first heavenly layer of the Aeon, but did you know that he was able to kill 98 martial saints from the Battle King sect as soon as he made a move? The lowest was a 2-star martial saint, and the highest was a 4-star martial saint. None of them survived. That's impossible. How can a 1-star martial saint kill a 4-star martial saint? I'm not the only one who saw it. Everyone in the Ancient Mirror sect fell silent. It was already hard to believe that a 1-star saint could fight against a 4-star saint. A 1-star saint killing a 4-star saint was like a dream. A 1-star saint killing a 4-star saint instantly. Many second-rate quasi-first-rate and first-rate forces within the Azure Water Imperial dynasty first didn't believe it when they heard the news. Then, they were shocked and fell silent. The Azure Water Imperial family also fell silent. A tall figure was sitting on the sect leader's throne within the War King sect's magnificent hall. He was looking down from above. His body unconsciously emitted a frightening aura that caused the air to tremble. Ripples spread out from his body. Below him stood more than a dozen golden-robed men and women. Among them, the devilish-looking man and the iron tower-like brawny man were among them. Counting from the right, the iron tower-like brawny man stood in second place, the devilish-looking man stood in third place, and the person standing in first place was an ordinary-looking middle-aged man. He was neither fat nor skinny, neither tall nor short. His aura was restrained and his eyes were ordinary. He was the kind of person that would be forgotten if he was placed in a crowd. However, if one were to look closely at his eyes, they would discover that there was a terrifying light in the depths of his pupils. It was as if there were 2 divine swords that could pierce through space and cut apart heaven and earth. Once they were released, it would definitely shake the heavens and earth. The 11th envoy and the 12th envoy are dead. The person on the throne spoke. His voice was like a great bell, causing the dozen golden-robed envoys below to tremble. The person on the throne only mentioned the 11th envoy and the 12th envoy. He didn't mention the other martial saints that had died because they didn't truly belong to the War King sect. The 7th envoy, the 11th envoy and the 12th envoy's deaths are indirectly related to you, said the person on the throne. Sect leader, I didn't investigate the True Sword sect's strength properly, which led to the 11th envoy and the 12th envoy's death. I am willing to accept the punishment, said the golden-robed man standing in 7th place. He looked a bit thin and weak. He immediately bowed. There's no need for the punishment this time. The True Sword sect has hidden too deeply. I didn't expect it either. However, you still need to investigate the True Sword sect's strength, said the person on the throne. Since my master came into being, you have all been nurtured by him. You have all been nurtured by him. You have all been nurtured for 1,000 days to be used in a single moment. However, it wasn't easy to nurture each of you. The 11th envoy and the 12th envoy's deaths are very painful for me. It's also a loss for our sect. Therefore, you must investigate the True Sword sect's strength before you act. Yes, sect leader, said the dozen golden-robed men. In their hearts, the sect leader was extremely dignified. His words were like an imperial edict. Our sect's expansion doesn't need to stop because of the True Sword sect. Send out invitations to the other third-rate and quasi-second-rate forces. Those who don't accept it will be exterminated, said the person on the throne. Yes, said the reply in unison. It was even more forceful. The Battle King sect didn't immediately take revenge on the True Sword sect, which was within everyone's expectations. After all, after this battle, the True Sword sect's strength had become even more mysterious. They couldn't see through it. They didn't know if it was just like that or if they had an even more powerful trump card. If they didn't know their trump card, they might just take revenge randomly. It might cause even greater losses. Of course, if the Battle King sect was willing to send out their strongest forces, they might be able to destroy the True Sword sect. However, they might also be destroyed by the True Sword sect. That would be a risky move. What the Battle King sect wanted was a stable and fast development. However, the Battle King sect's other action was out of everyone's expectations. Originally, some people thought that after the True Sword sect's losses, the Battle King sect would be quiet for a while. However, they didn't expect that other than not taking revenge immediately, the Battle King sect would still send invitations to the other third-rate and quasi-second-rate forces, asking them to submit. Within the Kanglan dynasty, in the Black Cloud Mountain Range, there was an old and powerful quasi-second-rate force, the Black Cloud sect. The Black Cloud sect was created by the Black Cloud Sage 1,000 years ago. The Black Cloud Sage was a 7-star saint expert. Therefore, the Black Cloud sect was a second-rate force. However, ever since the Black Cloud Sage's death, the Black Cloud sect had never produced a 7-star saint expert. The most powerful one was only at the peak of the 6-star saint level. Therefore, the Black Cloud sect naturally fell from a second-rate force to a quasi-second-rate force. Even so, the Black Cloud sect still had a foundation that ordinary quasi-second-rate forces did not have. There were more than 26-star martial saints in the sect, and there were even 4 6-star martial saints at the peak. Other than the fact that they did not have a 7-star martial saint, the Black Cloud sect was not inferior to a second-rate force in any other aspect. Right now, the Black Cloud sect's sect master and various elders were present in the Black Cloud Palace. The Battle King sect is truly arrogant. They actually dared to extend their hands to our Black Cloud sect. An elder coldly snorted as he waved the golden invitation in his hand. I originally thought that the Battle King sect would be well behaved for a period of time after suffering a great loss at the True Sword sect. Looks like they're treating us as a soft persimmon and want to pinch us, said another elder. There were dozens of elders in the Black Cloud sect, and every one of them had extraordinary strength. Just thinking about it, there were more than 26-star saint experts. Adding the other saint experts, there were more than 100 of them. As long as a 7-star saint expert was born, the Black Cloud sect would immediately become a powerful second-rate force. The Battle King's golden invitation also gave the Black Cloud sect 3 days to prepare. 3 days later, the Battle King sect would send an envoy to receive the Black Cloud sect. This news wasn't concealed, and was directly spread to the outside world. Many people knew about it. At the same time, the news of the Black Cloud sect's rejection was also spread. The Black Cloud sect was very powerful, and they had their own foundation and courage. Immediately, everyone's gazes shifted from the True Sword sect to the Black Cloud sect. The Black Cloud sect's attention skyrocketed. The Black Cloud sect was ranked in the top 3 of the quasi-second-rate forces in the Azure Water dynasty. They were extremely powerful. If Chumu hadn't released those puppets, the True Sword sect and the Black Cloud sect would have been 2 completely different existences. The Black Cloud sect's strength was publicly acknowledged, while the Battle King sect's origins were mysterious. Even after the True Sword sect's defeat, they didn't immediately take revenge on the True Sword sect. They didn't stop their actions either. This meant that they were still very powerful. 26-star saints and over 100 saint experts. This Black Cloud sect is indeed very powerful. Chumu smiled faintly. However, the Battle King sect is definitely stronger than the Black Cloud sect. This time, I have a premonition that the Black Cloud sect is finished. 3 days passed very quickly. A 10-meter-long golden flying ship of the Battle King sect streaked across the sky at an extremely fast speed towards the Black Cloud sect. It soon arrived above the Black Cloud sect. The flying ship's door opened and a figure flew out. It was a golden-robed man with long hair. The part of his face that wasn't covered by his long hair looked a little demonic. There was a hint of laziness in his eyes. With a wave of his hand, he put away the flying ship. His figure flashed, and he landed lightly but quickly. He ignored all obstructions and headed straight for the Black Cloud sect's main hall. "Who are you? How dare you barge into my Black Cloud sect's main hall?" An elder immediately scolded. "Let me introduce myself. I'm the 3rd envoy of the Battle King sect. I'm here to take over the Black Cloud sect." The demonic golden-robed man smiled faintly. He had an indescribable sense of casualness as he spoke unhurriedly. His appearance made it seem like he didn't place anyone in his eyes. "I'm the envoy of the Battle King sect. I've been waiting for you for a long time." As soon as he finished speaking, silhouettes appeared in the main hall of the sect. The Black Cloud sect's sect leader and the 6-star saint elders were all gathered. Outside, the 5-star saint and 4-star saint elders formed an encirclement. Vaguely, it seemed to be some kind of battle formation, with the pressure of black clouds pressing down. "From the looks of it, you've rejected my offer." The 3rd emissary's expression did not change in the slightest as he lazily said, "What I hate the most is people like you who refuse to cooperate. You'll only submit if some of you die." Chapter 1582. There were a total of 18 envoys from the Battle King sect. Ever since the Battle King sect had appeared, only the envoys ranked below the top 10 would take action. They would go to the main halls of 3rd-rate and quasi-second-rate sects to accept their allegiance and put them under the jurisdiction of the Battle King sect. For example, the True Sword sect had only sent the 11th and 12th envoys. The top 10 envoys, especially the top 3 envoys, were extremely mysterious. No one in the outside world knew of their strength, methods, and abilities. Today, when the Battle King sect sent the Battle King Golden Invitation to the Black Cloud sect, many people were watching. When the Battle King sect sent the 3rd envoy to the Black Cloud sect, the spectators were even more interested. The 3rd envoy was one of the most mysterious envoys. Just what kind of strength did he have to dare to go to the powerful Black Cloud sect alone? Was he arrogant, Or was he truly confident? Everything would be revealed very soon. The Black Cloud sect's strength was obvious to all. It was something that had been known for hundreds of years. Even the first-rate sects were certain of the Black Cloud sect's strength. Most people believed that the third envoy would be like throwing a meat bun at a dog. He wouldn't be able to return alive. This was because the third envoy wasn't a high-level saint, but a peak 6-star saint. Within the Black Cloud sect, there was more than one peak 6-star saint. It was even rumored that although the great elder of the Black Cloud sect was only at the peak 6-star saint level, he had personally killed 3 peak 6-star saints, and that was when they joined forces. Most people believed that no matter how strong the third envoy was, he wouldn't be able to fight against so many saints of the Black Cloud sect by himself. He would most likely fail this time, and might even be killed by the Black Cloud sect. The Battle King sect would suffer in silence. There were even many people who were secretly planning that if the third emissary of the Battle King sect were to really die in the Black Cloud sect, they would follow suit and attack the Battle King sect. After all, no one liked an unstable existence that appeared out of nowhere and threatened their survival at all times. Everything depended on whether the third envoy would succeed or fail, and whether he would be killed if he failed. However, not long after the Battle King sect's third envoy entered the Black Cloud sect, the saints hiding around the Battle King sect saw a golden figure fly out of the Black Cloud sect. A golden flying ship appeared, and the golden figure entered it and quickly left the Black Cloud sect. Clearly, the third envoy of the Battle King sect had left the Black Cloud sect alive. He actually managed to leave alive. It seems like the Black Cloud sect doesn't want to have a falling out with the Battle King sect. With the Battle King Martial School's tyrannical style, the Black Cloud Martial School let the third emissary leave alive. Soon, the Battle King Martial School will definitely send a large number of saint-level warriors here. How stupid. However, very quickly, a shocking piece of news came from the Battle King sect. The Black Cloud sect had changed its name to the Black Cloud Hall, becoming one of the branches of the Battle King sect. The Black Cloud sect didn't deny it and silently responded. They even erected a large stone tablet outside the Black Cloud sect, with the words Black Cloud Hall written on it. Now, everyone understood that when the third envoy of the Battle King sect left, it wasn't because the Black Cloud sect didn't want to have a falling out with the Battle King sect, but because they had already subdued the Black Cloud sect. What kind of ability did a peak 6-star saint have to be able to subdue the powerful Black Cloud sect by himself? Could it be that the third envoy of the Battle King sect was a monster? One had to know that the difference between a peak 6-star saint and a 7-star saint was huge, far greater than the difference between a peak 3-star saint and a 4-star saint. If a genius who could fight a 4-star saint with the strength of a 3-star saint, when he reached the 6-star saint level, it would be very difficult for him to fight a 7-star saint. At most, he would be able to dominate the 6-star saint level. Of course, if it was a monstrous genius, it would be different. Monstrous geniuses were said to appear once in 1,000 years, and were extremely rare. They could fight against cultivators who were 2 stars higher than them. A 6-star saint could definitely fight against an ordinary 7-star saint, but they couldn't fight against an 8-star saint. Of course, the monstrous geniuses in the legends had even greater strength. Could the third envoy of the Battle King sect be a monstrous genius? It was hard to imagine. If he was, then the Black Cloud sect would really be subdued. What happened to the third envoy of the Battle King sect after he entered the Black Cloud sect? Apart from the Battle King sect's saint-level cultivators, nobody knew. However, the Battle King sect didn't say anything, and the Black Cloud sect didn't say anything either. Not long after, a new discovery was made. The current leader of the Black Cloud Hall wasn't the former patriarch of the Black Cloud sect, nor was it the great elder or the second elder of the Black Cloud sect. It was the former third elder of the Black Cloud sect. Then, what about the former patriarch, great elder, and second elder of the Black Cloud sect? Were they dead? Indeed, it was very likely that they were dead. Moreover, it was very likely that they had been killed by the third envoy of the Battle King sect. Because of that, the unyielding Black Cloud sect had submitted. Very quickly, another piece of news spread. The third envoy of the Battle King sect was an unrivaled 6-star saint-level cultivator. If his guess was correct, then the third emissary of the Battle King sect had killed the sect master, first elder, and second elder of the Black Cloud sect all by himself under the watchful eyes of the saint-level experts of the Black Cloud sect. Moreover, he had left unscathed. In the Black Cloud sect, there were only a few peak-level 6-star saints. The Black Cloud sect's sect master, great elder, and second elder were 3 of them. Moreover, the great elder's strength was the strongest, followed by the Black Cloud sect's sect master and second elder. Because of their talent and the Black Cloud sect's foundation, the 3 of them were not ordinary peak-level 6-star saints. With such strength, and with so many 6-star and 5-star saints surrounding them, they had still been killed. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that the third envoy of the Battle King sect was an unrivaled 6-star saint-level cultivator. Of course, there were always people who thought that they were very strong and wouldn't accept it. They would even challenge them. An unrivaled 6-star saint-level cultivator. When Chu-Mu heard the news, he smiled indifferently. He didn't make any comments because the word unrivaled was very vague. Who could be truly unrivaled? Moreover, he didn't know anything about the third envoy of the Battle King sect. If he didn't know anything about him, he couldn't make any comment. However, using the word unrivaled to describe him didn't seem to bring any benefits, other than attracting unnecessary trouble. Just as Chu-Mu thought, trouble quickly came to the Battle King sect. Outside the Battle King sect, someone was shouting. In the distance there were even people watching. Gu Zhenze is here. The third envoy of the Battle King sect, come out and fight with me. This person was a burly man with a huge sword on his back. His eyes were cold as he shouted. His voice was like rolling thunder, reverberating in all directions. It's Gu Zhenze from the quasi-first-rate force, the Sun-Shrouding Valley. It's said that he once killed 7 6-star saints at the peak of the 6-star saint level. When he reached the peak of the 6-star saint level, he fought against 5 veteran 6-star saints at the peak of the 6-star saint level all by himself. In the end, he killed 3 of them and severely injured 2. He's definitely a powerful 6-star saint-level cultivator. Moreover, he always thought that he was the strongest person under the 7-star saint level in the Kanglan dynasty. This time, it's said that the third envoy of the Battle King sect is an unrivaled 6-star saint-level cultivator. He's not convinced, so he came to challenge. The people in the distance discussed. Gu Zhenze is here. The third envoy of the Battle King sect, come out and fight with me. Gu Zhenze is here. The third envoy of the Battle King sect, come out and fight with me. Gu Zhenze is here. The third envoy of the Battle King sect, come out and fight with me. Seeing that there was no movement from the Battle King sect, Gu Zhenze shouted 3 more times. His voice was like rolling thunder, spreading further and further. Then, a golden ray of light flew out from the Battle King sect. I hate trouble the most, but you just have to find trouble for me. As the golden ray of light flew out, the third envoy of the Battle King sect appeared in front of Gu Zhenze. They were a few hundred meters apart. If that's the case, then fight with me. Defeat me or... Gu Zhenze's eyes shone with a sharp light. The big sword on his back jumped up. He raised his right arm and grabbed the big sword. Then, he slashed it down, pointing it at the third envoy of the Battle King sect. With a thunderous voice, he roared, "Be defeated by me!" At that moment, it was as if lightning had flashed across the sky, lighting up the sky and the earth. It also lit up Gu Zhenze's face. Everyone could see the determination on his face. Defeat me or be defeated by me. Choose one. How domineering. When I fight, it's only life and death. The third envoy of the Battle King sect said calmly. His voice was calm and lazy, but it was filled with murderous intent. When he fought, he would either live or die. Calmly, he was even more domineering. All right, then it's not a winner. It's only life and death. Gu Zhenze was not afraid at all. He was a strong cultivator who had killed his way out of a storm of blood. Death was a common occurrence for him. Then, "You can die," the third envoy of the Battle King sect said softly. He extended his index finger and pointed it at Gu Zhenze. Gu Zhenze's eyes lit up. A strange energy seemed to have flashed past. It was like an illusion. Hundreds of meters away, Gu Zhenze held his sword in his hand. His strength was increasing rapidly. Just as he was about to reach his peak, his body suddenly trembled. His eyes widened. The chi that was about to reach his peak started to fluctuate. Then, his bulging eyes started to bleed. His nose, ears, and mouth also started to bleed. His body shook violently and he fell down. Life and death with one finger. The third envoy of the Battle King sect didn't cover his one eye. He lazily looked into the distance. Everyone was shocked. Everyone retreated far away. Their hearts were filled with shock. They were afraid that the third envoy of the Battle King sect would kill them all. Even a strong cultivator like Gu Zhenze had been killed, let alone them. Chapter 1583. Gu Zhenze came to challenge the Battle King sect's third emissary and was killed with a single finger. The news was like a storm. In just half a day, it spread throughout the Kanglan dynasty, causing a huge commotion. Killed with a single finger? I saw it with my own eyes. Many people went silent. The third emissary of the Battle King sect was only at the peak of the 6-star saint level. Logically speaking, he shouldn't have been able to kill a veteran 6-star saint with a single finger. Even if he had the strength of a 7-star saint, he shouldn't have been able to kill Gu Zhenze so easily. Indeed, the difference between a 6-star saint and a 7-star saint was huge. It was possible to kill a 6-star saint instantly, but it would consume some energy. According to the news, the third emissary had only casually pointed with a single finger. There wasn't any powerful energy fluctuation, but the powerful Gu Zhenze was bleeding from all 7 orifices. This kind of death was extremely strange. This confirmed that the third emissary of the Battle King sect was invincible in the 6-star saint level. Easily insta-kill a powerful 6-star sacred rank peak expert with a single finger? Chu Mu muttered to himself after hearing the news, and his thoughts quickly turned. Sovereign, although the third emissary of the Battle King sect is a 6-star saint, his strength is probably comparable to a 7-star saint. The second elder said, in fact, the third emissary of the Battle King sect is already a 7-star saint, but he used a special method to control his aura to the peak of the 6-star saint level. Chu Mu didn't reply. The third elder spoke up, Sovereign, the Battle King sect's first emissary, second emissary, and third emissary are all very mysterious. The ranking of the emissaries is very likely based on their strength. If the third emissary is so powerful, then the second emissary and the first emissary's strength. Chu Mu understood the meaning behind the third elder's words. If the third emissary was already so powerful, then what about the second and first emissaries? It was hard to imagine. The third emissary could kill a 6-star saint with a single finger. Normal 7-star saints wouldn't be able to do so, Chu Mu said. He already had a clear idea in his head. If the third emissary is a powerful 7-star saint rank, then the second emissary and first emissary's strength will be even stronger. They might even be 7-star saint rank experts at the high stage or peak. Then, the Battle King sect's sect master's strength may be 8-star saint rank or even higher. Listening to Chu Mu's analysis, the elders' hearts gradually sank. If what Chu Mu said was true, then with the current strength of the True Sword sect, it was still impossible to fight against the War King sect. However, this is only a guess. There is another possibility. which is that the Battle King Sect's first and second emissaries are indeed 7-star Saint rank experts, but the third emissary is a true peak 6-star Saint rank expert," said Chu Mu. "Could it be that the third envoy of the Battle King Sect is a monster? Otherwise, how could he have killed a powerful 6-star martial saint so easily with a single finger?" One of the elders exclaimed. "I don't know if he's a monster or not, but—" Chu Mu didn't continue. Instead, he changed the topic. "Elders, don't worry. Even if the Battle King Sect has a 9-star Saint Realm expert, the True Sword Sect isn't afraid. Everything in the sect will continue as usual." This wasn't the first time Chu Mu said this. Hearing it again, the elders were stunned. "Patriarch, what kind of trump card does the True Sword Sect have that we don't fear a 9-star Saint Realm expert?" The second elder couldn't help but ask. "If a 9-star Saint Realm expert comes, you'll know." Chu Mu smiled and continued to monitor the situation of the Battle King Sect. Gu Zhenze was killed. He belonged to the quasi-first-rate faction, Shrouded Sun Valley. He was also a genius that was heavily nurtured. Shrouded Sun Valley won't let his death go. Yes, Patriarch. The elders were helpless. The Patriarch liked to be mysterious. Shrouded Sun Valley was a quasi-first-rate faction. There were 8-star saints in the sect, and more than 5 7-star saints. Gu Zhenze is dead. Who will go to the Battle King Sect to seek justice? Shrouded Sun Valley Master asked. Valley Master, I'll go. A 7-star mid-level Saint Realm expert stood up and leaped. He turned into a stream of light and flew out of Shrouded Sun Valley, heading towards the Battle King Sect. A 7-star Saint Realm expert's flying speed was extremely fast, faster than an ordinary flying ship. Not long after the 7-star Saint Realm expert from Shrouded Sun Valley took action, many factions knew about it because they had been paying attention. A 7-star Saint Realm expert heading towards the Battle King Sect should be able to see the true situation of the Battle King Sect. The 7-star Saint Realm expert from Shrouded Sun Valley finally arrived outside the Battle King Sect. I'm Shrouded Sun Valley's 4th elder. A few days ago, the 3rd envoy of the Battle King Sect killed my elder Gu Zhenze. Today, I'm here to seek an explanation. The 7-star Saint of the Shrouded Sun Valley didn't enter the Battle King Sect rashly because he didn't know if there was a 7-star Saint in the Battle King Sect. He didn't know if there was a stronger Saint, so he couldn't take the risk. Scram! A loud roar sounded like the roar of an ancient beast. It was so powerful that it shook the ears of the people who followed from afar. It was as if their heads were hit by a giant hammer. Their bodies swayed in the air and they almost fell. Everyone was inexplicably shocked. This was definitely the power of a high-level Saint Realm expert. Indeed, there was a high-level Saint Realm expert in the Battle King Sect. The expression of the 7-star Saint-level expert from Shrouded Sun Valley changed, but he was not affected much. Stop pretending to be mysterious. Come out. With a loud roar, the Shrouded Sun Valley's 4th elder raised his hand and bent his fingers into a claw. He clawed down viciously. Boundless energy of heaven and earth gathered to form a giant claw. It was like a flying dragon's claw. Its power was shocking. Scram! The second roar sounded like the roar of an ancient beast. Immediately, a golden light shot up into the sky and rushed towards the giant claw. It was a golden figure. His body was tall and strong, like an iron tower. He clenched his fist, stretched it out, and punched out again. Clenching his fist, stretching it out, and punching out. It looked like a very simple action, but it was like pulling a bow and pulling the bowstring to its limit. It was such a simple punch, but the moment it was launched, the space in front of the fist seemed to be compressed in an instant, and it also seemed to be broken in an instant. The Saint-level cultivators who were watching from afar only felt the space around them solidify, suppressing their bodies and making it difficult for them to move. The incomparably strong pressure continued to invade them, and they had no choice but to use their powers to resist. The ordinary punch was like an earth-shattering punch. It shattered the mountains, shattered the rivers, shattered the earth, and even the sky was about to shatter. That punch seemed to have struck everyone's hearts and souls, causing them to be incomparably shocked. With a bang, the fourth elder's claw was directly shattered. It disintegrated inch by inch and turned into ashes. The punch carried an endless power as it blasted towards the fourth elder of the Sun Valley. It was extremely fast, ferocious, and domineering. With a boom, the fourth elder's expression changed drastically. He hurriedly pushed his palms forward, and a huge palm print condensed, forming an astonishing defense. This was a spell technique that was passed down in the Sun Valley. It was called the sun-covering palm, and was said to be able to cover the sky and the sun when practiced to the extreme. The sun-covering palm could be used for both offense and defense. It was extremely powerful. With a bang, the punch was blocked by the sun-covering palm, but the golden figure raised his fist and threw out a second punch. This punch was even more astonishing. With a bang, the sun-covering palm was directly blasted into pieces, unable to resist. Immediately, the golden figure threw out a third punch. When the third punch was thrown out, in an instant, fine cracks seemed to appear in the void under the fist. The fist force was like a giant dragon that was invincible, causing heaven and earth to shatter. The fourth elder of the Sun Valley's expression changed drastically. His face was filled with horror, but he was unable to dodge because the void around him seemed to be imprisoned. Even with his mid-stage 7-star saint-level strength, he could not move. He could only gather all the strength in his body and gather it in his palms, exhausting all his strength to use the sun-covering palm. An even larger and thicker giant palm appeared. In an instant it collided with the fist that was like a giant dragon. With a bang, it was as if the sky and earth were collapsing. The void exploded and countless ripples spread out, destroying everything. The dragon-like fist blasted open the thick and huge sun-covering palm and blasted a hole in it. The remaining force bombarded the fourth elder of the Sun Valley. In an instant, the fourth elder of the Sun Valley was hit in the chest. The treasured robe on his body shattered in an instant. His powerful saint body was also torn apart in an instant, as if his body was filled with explosives and detonated. The fist force contained an incomparably terrifying power that rushed into every part of the fourth elder of the Sun Valley's body. Even his head was not spared, causing his head to explode in an instant. Even the primordial spirit in his head was directly impacted. The primordial spirit that was about to escape shook after being impacted, and could not leave at all. It was constantly bombarded by the terrifying fist force. The power was very ingenious. Under each bombardment, the primordial spirit was constantly weakened. After losing the protection of the body, it was destroyed in a few hits and completely disappeared between heaven and earth. The golden figure that was like an iron tower stood in the void and looked at the dissipating fourth elder of the Sun Valley. He snorted coldly with disdain. Just now, it was him who had blasted the fourth elder of the Sun Valley with 3 punches. Not even his bones were left, and even his primordial spirit was destroyed. I am the second envoy of the warlord sect. If there is anyone else who is blind, feel free to come find me. After the strong man said those harsh words, he turned and flew into the mountain gate of the warlord's sect and disappeared. In the distance, all the saint-level experts who were watching the battle broke out in a cold sweat. A mid-level 7-star Saint Realm expert. That wasn't a mid-level Saint Realm expert, nor was it a low-level Saint Realm expert. That was an expert who could take charge of a second-rate force. Yet, he was defeated by someone with a single punch, and it was only 3 punches. Ferocious, incomparably ferocious. The second envoy of the warlord sect was really too ferocious. This was even more ferocious and shocking than the third envoy who had easily killed Guzhenza with 1 finger. Chapter 1584. In just a few short months, the Azure Water dynasty had undergone a drastic change. The number of major events that had happened was more than the past few decades. First, the Battle King sect had appeared out of nowhere. No one knew where they came from, but their methods were forceful. They had subdued many third-rate and quasi-second-rate forces. Those who refused to submit were annihilated. However, the second-rate, quasi-first-rate, and even super-first-rate forces did not do anything. Following this, the Battle King sect reached out to the True Sword sect. Everyone thought that the True Sword sect would either submit or be exterminated, but unexpectedly, more than 100 saint-level experts from the Battle King sect were killed. The Battle King sect did not immediately retaliate. Shortly after, the Battle King sect sent the Battle King Golden Invitation to the Black Cloud sect. However, the powerful Black Cloud sect rejected it. The Battle King sect's third envoy entered the Black Cloud sect. Everyone thought that the Battle King sect would suffer again, but the Black Cloud sect was subdued. The quasi-first-rate force, Shrouded Sun Valley, sent a 6-star peak saint to challenge the Battle King sect's third envoy. In the end, he was easily killed with a single finger. Shrouded Sun Valley sent a 7-star mid-level saint to demand an explanation from the Battle King sect. In the end, he was killed by the Battle King sect's second envoy with 3 punches. What a terrifying Battle King sect! Even a 7-star mid-level saint couldn't withstand 3 punches. The Battle King sect is definitely a powerful second-rate force. They might even be a quasi-first-rate force. Too mysterious. They appeared out of nowhere and are extremely domineering. What was interesting was that the quasi-first-rate force, Shrouded Sun Valley, did not retaliate. It was as if they had swallowed their anger. As for the other major forces, they did not make any moves either. How interesting! Chumu smiled. He was even more certain that the Battle King sect's origin was extraordinary. There must be a huge secret behind them. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so terrifying. As for the other major forces, they would definitely know about it. The stronger the force, the clearer they would know. What did a force expand for? Talents? Resources? It was mainly for these 2 reasons. Only with talents could they pass down their legacy. Only with resources could they provide a better cultivation environment for talent. Every sect was actually expanding outwards. It was just that it had already become a foregone conclusion, so their expansion wasn't obvious. But the Battle King sect's methods were extremely intense. They had completely compressed the hundreds or even thousands of years of expansion of other sects into a few short months. In Battle King sect, there are at least 2 7-star sacred rank experts. There should also be an 8-star sacred rank expert. As for whether they have a 9-star sacred rank expert, I'm not sure. Chumu thought to himself. However, he was not afraid. Perhaps Battle King sect was very powerful, even more so than True Sword sect. However, Chumu still had some trump cards and method. Unless he had no other choice, he wouldn't casually use these trump cards. Every time he used them, he would definitely kill a powerful enemy. If the Warlord sect really wanted to deal with the True Sword sect, they would have to reveal some of their trump cards and make the Warlord sect suffer even greater losses. Even if there was a Saint King behind the Warlord sect, Chumu still had some confidence in dealing with them, because Bai Ling was in the True Sword sect's spiritual seal. There were 5 experts in the True Sword sect's spiritual seal. They represented Chumu's 5 chances. The weakest among them was a 7-star saint, and so on. The 4th strongest was an 8-star saint, the 3rd was a 9-star saint, and the 2nd strongest was a 9-star saint. The 2nd strongest was beyond the 9-star saint, and should be an exceptional expert. Then, the strongest Bai Ling, who was above the exceptional experts, should be a great emperor or holy emperor. Chumu had already let the 5th and 3rd experts fight. After that, Chumu couldn't let them fight anymore. However, the 4th, 2nd, and 1st experts hadn't fought yet. 8-star martial saints, peerless experts, great emperors, holy emperors. Chumu was very confident. Then, there was the level 6 puppet formation, heavenly puppet formation, true secret 4 symbols sword formation, and so on. Other than Chu Mu, Gu Luankong, and a few others, no one else knew about this. No matter how good the seventh envoy of the Battle King sect was, he wouldn't be able to find out. 10 days had passed since the 11th and 12th envoy of the Battle King sect were killed. In these 10 days, the Great Elder had entered seclusion in the profound Yang Sword Hall. The other martial saints cultivated and took care of the sect's affairs. The disciples cultivated even more diligently. Because of the encouragement they received from that day, all of them had set Chu Mu as their goal. They were very motivated. Chu Mu was the same as usual. He cultivated his sword origin, pondered over his saint body refinement method, cultivated sword techniques, cultivated sword styles, and comprehended sword heaven and earth. He also took some time to refine snowflakes. Occasionally, he would rest and research puppet Dao. In a short period of time, he created a 1-star saint rank puppet. After reaching the immemorial realm, it wasn't easy to raise one's cultivation base. It had been more than a year since he left the ancient sacred city and returned to the True Sword sect. His cultivation base was still at the early first sky of the immemorial realm. His primordial spirit was also at the peak of the second level. It couldn't be helped. Without a primordial spirit cultivation method, it was very difficult to raise one's cultivation base. Chu Mu also felt that under normal circumstances, it would take at least 10 years for his primordial spirit to reach the third level. In the Battle King sect, the seventh emissary spent more than 10 days researching the True Sword sect and collecting information. He even snuck into the True Sword sect several times to investigate and eavesdrop. In the end, he believed that he had grasped everything about the True Sword sect and understood its strength and foundation. In other words, the True Sword sect has a total of 14 martial saints. The sect master is a 1-star martial saint, but he can kill a 4-star martial saint. I suspect that he has the strength to fight a 5-star martial saint. There are 3 puppet arrays in the True Sword sect. One is comparable to a 5-star martial saint, one is comparable to a 6-star martial saint, and one is comparable to a 7-star martial saint. There is also a puppet cave. The puppets in the puppet cave are all below the martial saint level. The 7th envoy spoke frankly. This is the strength of the True Sword sect. If there is anything hidden, then there is an additional 7-star martial saint. The 7th emissary was most adept at information gathering. The training he received was mostly related to information gathering. Therefore, his words were very convincing. He didn't know that the 3 puppets guarding the spirit pool had been temporarily recalled by Chu Mu. "Who will go against the True Sword sect?" asked the Battle King sect's sect master. Most people didn't say anything. They were only 6-star martial saints. The True Sword sect had a 7-star martial saint puppet array. It wasn't something they could deal with. The ones who were truly capable were the top 3 envoys. "I'll go." Just as the second envoy was about to speak, the third envoy spoke first. "I'll see for myself what's so special about the True Sword sect's sect master. He can instantly kill a 4-star martial saint as a 1-star martial saint." "I'll go." "The True Sword sect has a 7-star martial saint puppet array," said the second envoy. "Puppets will always be puppets. Besides my speed." The third envoy was very enthusiastic this time. He really wanted to see what the True Sword sect's sect master was capable of. As soon as he finished speaking, the third envoy's figure slowly faded. He disappeared like smoke. His real body had already left the Battle King sect. Soon after, the people on the thrones also left. Only a dozen envoys remained. Third Brother's wind-mist movement technique is even more mysterious. I didn't even notice him leaving. The 7th envoy was astonished. Third Brother is about to break through. The silent first envoy suddenly spoke. His voice was ordinary and calm. He was publicly recognized as the number 1 envoy. He was extremely powerful. He didn't speak much, but his words were very convincing. "That's great. As long as third brother breaks through, he can instantly kill a 7-star martial saint. The second envoy smiled. The envoys left one by one. The second envoy and the first envoy left together. If third brother hadn't said anything, I would have gone to the True Sword sect too, said the first envoy after a moment of silence. The second envoy was astonished. The True Sword sect is known as a sword cultivation sect. All of their martial saints are sword saints. The True Sword sect's sect master is a 1-star sword saint, but he can instantly kill a 4-star martial saint. It's said that the sword domain he uses is no ordinary sword domain. I'm very interested, added the first envoy. The second envoy immediately understood. The first envoy's cultivation path was also the sword Tao. The first envoy was a powerful sword saint. Since Big Brother is interested, why don't we go to the True Sword sect together? Suggested the second envoy. There's no need. If the True Sword sect has a 7-star sword saint, then it's worth me going, said the first envoy. In other words, the True Sword sect didn't even have the qualifications for him to go because they didn't have a 7-star sword saint. He didn't care about the puppet formation. Actually, even if we leave now, it'll be too late by the time we get there. Third brother is extremely powerful. He can easily take care of the True Sword sect's sect master. He won't even have the chance to release the puppet formation, said the second envoy. What they meant was that the True Sword sect's sect master, Chu-Mu, was already a dead man. After the third envoy left the Battle King sect, he took out a 10-meter-long golden flying ship. He entered the flying ship and flew towards the True Sword sect at a speed comparable to a 7-star martial saint. The third envoy was more lazy. He enjoyed himself as much as he could. He wouldn't waste his energy to travel. The flying ship was extremely fast. It flew across the sky with a golden streak of light. It didn't take long for it to attract the attention of many people. It couldn't be helped. The Battle King sect was now the focus of attention. Every move they made would attract attention. There were spies all around the Battle King sect. As such, the third envoy's flying ship was quickly discovered by others. They immediately spread the news to let more people know. That direction. It's in the direction of the True Sword sect. Is the Battle King sect finally going to make a move on the True Sword sect? It seems like the Battle King sect has figured out the True Sword sect's strength. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in such a hurry to make a move. The third envoy is an invincible 6-star martial saint. Will the True Sword sect be able to stand firm this time? After the third envoy's flying ship, the other martial saints also followed. Chapter 1585. The golden flying ship arrived outside the gates of the True Sword sect. The golden flying ship was kept, and the third emissary appeared. He landed outside the gates and didn't barge in. Instead, he asked the disciples guarding the gates to report his arrival. Sect leader, please don't. The third emissary of the Battle King sect is too strange. The second elder's expression changed. He was afraid that Chu-Mu would agree. The third emissary of the Battle King sect requested to visit the sect leader of the True Sword sect. Since it was a visit, it would be a face-to-face meeting. The news of the third emissary killing Gu Jinzhe, a 6-star saint, with one finger was still circulating. Chu-Mu was only a 1-star saint. No matter how strong he was, he couldn't fight against a 6-star saint. Even a 6-star saint wasn't a match for the third emissary. How could Chu-Mu fight against him? If Chu-Mu was killed, wouldn't the True Sword sect be destroyed or become a vassal of the Battle King sect? No matter what the outcome was, they couldn't accept it. Everyone, don't worry. Let him in. All of you, go outside. Chu-Mu said. Sect leader, please don't. The elders still wanted to persuade him. I have a trump card. Chu-Mu said, his tone calm and confident. Chu-Mu was extremely resolute. When the elders saw that they couldn't persuade him, they expressed that they wanted to stay. However, they ultimately had no choice but to leave. Chumu had a guess that was pretty close to the truth. Therefore, if the elders stayed, they wouldn't be of any use. Instead, they might get killed. The current True Sword sect had too few sacred rank experts, and they were all sword saint. They couldn't afford to lose them. Although the elders left the main hall, they didn't go far. They were scattered all around. The third emissary of the Battle King's sect floated over. His figure was like a gust of wind. In the blink of an eye, the third emissary entered the main hall. All the elders were nervous, and their palms were sweating. Within the great hall of the sect, only Chumu sat on the sect master's seat. Although you're only a 1-star saint, your courage is extraordinary. Even a 6-star saint can't compare to you. After the Battle King sect's third emissary entered the great hall, his gaze fell on Chumu and he lazily spoke. Just by standing there, he gave people the feeling that he was going to lie down. It was as if he would never sit if he could lie down, and he would never stand if he could sit. "Do you have a name?" Chumu said calmly. He didn't feel any fear just because the other party had killed a 6-star saint with a single finger. It was as if the other party's strength was about the same as his. "The third one is my name," the third emissary said. "You are indeed a rare genius. Join the Battle King sect. The True Sword sect will have the highest status and the best treatment." It had to be said that this was indeed a very big promise. Based on the current situation, the War King's Gate would not stop and would continue to expand rapidly. In the future, there would be more and more factions that would submit to the War King's Gate. Naturally, there would be a difference between the factions that submitted to the War King's Gate and the resources they enjoyed, the importance they received, and so on. A single promise could allow the True Sword sect to receive treatment and importance that other factions couldn't. It would be completely different. Its status would be even higher, just below one person and above all. However, Chumu wasn't moved at all. His True Sword sect didn't need to submit to anyone or any faction. Back then, the True God Sword sect was a large sword cultivation sect that stood at the peak of the deep blue world. The True Sword sect wanted to recreate the glory of the True God Sword sect. No matter how great the War King's Gate's background was, they wouldn't be able to stop the True Sword sect. "I'm very curious. Just where did the War King's Gate come from?" Chumu didn't answer. Instead, he asked another question. "As long as you submit to the sect, you'll find out very quickly. The War King's Gate's origins will definitely exceed your imagination," said the third envoy. He didn't seem as lazy as before. Instead, he seemed serious. "Then there's no need for that. Let's cut to the chase and attack." "Let me see the attacks of a soul transformation cultivator," said Chumu. That casual sentence caused the third envoy's one eye that wasn't covered by his hair to tremble. It instantly narrowed and shot out a terrifying light. It took him a breath to recover. "You actually know. How did you know?" The third envoy's voice was no longer as lazy as before. This was the anger of someone whose secret had been seen through. Casually killing a peak 6-star saint with a single finger without causing any ripples of energy is something that even a 7-star saint can't do. As for you, you're not a monster, nor are you a 7-star saint. With your cultivation at the peak of the 6-star saint realm, you can easily kill a peak 6-star saint. Only a soul transformation cultivator can do that," Chumu said calmly. With each sentence, the third envoy's expression changed. However, Chumu acted as if he didn't notice anything and continued, "You're at the peak of the 6-star saint realm. As a cultivator of the Tao of primordial spirit, your primordial spirit should be at the peak of the 3rd level at most. As for your primordial spirit secret technique, it should be at the peak of the 3rd level at most." The third envoy's expression changed again and again. In the end, he calmed down and even started clapping. "Not bad, your analysis is correct. Then, do you think my primordial spirit secret technique is at the 3rd or 4th level?" asked the third envoy with a smile. There was a difference of 1 level between the 3rd and 4th level. Under normal circumstances, a third-level primordial spirit secret technique would be able to threaten a third-level primordial spirit secret technique. If one didn't have a corresponding defensive secret technique, their primordial spirit secret technique would be damaged or even destroyed. However, a fourth-level primordial spirit secret technique would be able to threaten a fourth-level primordial spirit secret technique. A third-level primordial spirit secret technique and a fourth-level primordial spirit secret technique. One was a black iron primordial spirit secret technique, while the other was a bronze primordial spirit secret technique. Strictly speaking, a third-level primordial spirit secret technique could threaten a 6-star saint, while a fourth-level primordial spirit secret technique could threaten a 7-star saint realm. It's the same whether it's at the third or fourth level. Chumu said. He wasn't a god. How could he know whether the third envoy's primordial spirit secret technique was at the third or fourth level? After all, there was too little information. Then, Chumu moved his mind and 6 puppets appeared in the hall. They were spread out in 6 directions and vaguely surrounded the third envoy. However, they hadn't formed a 5th-level puppet formation yet. Now, let's see if your primordial spirit secret technique can destroy my primordial spirit or if my puppets can form a puppet formation and kill you, Chumu said with a smile. If the third envoy had used his primordial spirit secret technique to attack him from the beginning, Chumu wouldn't have had the chance to release the 6 5-star saint puppets. Of course, because he was confident that he could block the third envoy's primordial spirit secret technique. He only needed to block it once. As for the current situation, it could be said that the third envoy had caused it himself. If he hadn't been so confident in himself and left time for Chumu, it could also be said that Chumu had caused it. His words had shaken the third envoy's mind and caused him to miss the best opportunity to attack. Now, the third envoy felt like he was riding a tiger and couldn't get off. However, he still had enough confidence in himself. He could use his primordial spirit secret technique to kill Chumu. Then, he could use the wind and smoke movement technique to escape the puppet formation and leave calmly. The primordial spirit of a cultivator of the primordial spirit secret technique was powerful and good at calculation and simulation. In a few breaths' time, he had already come up with a complete strategy in his mind. "I'll fulfill your last wish before you die," the third envoy said. His light sentence contained an infinite amount of murderous intent. With that, the third envoy stretched out a finger and pointed at Chumu. It was just like when he pointed at Guzhenza. It was light and there wasn't the slightest bit of smoke or fire. There were also no strong ripples of power. There was only a weak and strange ripple of power. In an instant, just as Chumu felt something, his body trembled slightly. The third envoy's primordial spirit secret technique had already entered his spiritual world and was closing in on his primordial spirit. In the outside world, primordial spirit secret technique was formless and colorless. It couldn't be seen, touched, or felt. Furthermore, it was extremely fast. Once it entered the spiritual world, it would appear. In Chumu's spiritual world, a completely black needle was piercing towards his primordial spirit at an extremely fast speed. The completely black needle exuded a frighteningly cold aura. It almost froze Chumu's spiritual world. Under this black needle, all rules and laws were powerless against it. In an instant, the black needle pierced through the red ring and shot towards the orange ring. The orange ring was also powerless against it. It was directly pierced through and shot towards the yellow ring. The yellow ring's defensive power was stronger than the orange ring's. After piercing through the red and orange rings, the black needle's speed decreased by a level. The power it carried also decreased by a level. In an instant, the black needle and the yellow ring clashed. The black needle desperately wanted to pierce through the yellow ring and attack Chumu's primordial spirit. As for the yellow ring, it resisted the black needle. This was because the yellow ring was the last and strongest line of defense. Once the yellow ring was pierced, Chumu's primordial spirit would be attacked. A primordial spirit without protection was very fragile. A peak level 3 primordial spirit secret technique, that's close to level 4. Chu Mu could clearly feel the power of the Black Needle. His primordial spirit was at the peak of level 2. As his soul was stronger, it was not inferior to a level 3 primordial spirit. With the 30% boost from the black gold mask, it was considered strong among level 3 primordial spirit. The red, orange, and yellow rings of the rainbow rings were also strengthened by 30%. The yellow ring could defend against level 3 primordial spirit secret technique. After being strengthened by 30%, it could barely defend against a peak level 3 primordial spirit secret technique. As for the Black Needle, it was weakened by 1 level by the red and orange rings. It was about the same as the yellow ring. The two of them faced off. Chu Mu's body only swayed for a moment before he regained his composure. Only the light in his eyes was flickering. The 6 5-star saint-level puppets moved at an extremely fast speed. In an instant, they formed a level 5 puppet formation. The third emissary's original plan was to use his primordial spirit to kill Chu Mu instantly before using the wind smoke body technique to escape before the puppet formation. However, after using his primordial spirit secret technique, he could feel that his primordial spirit secret technique was resisted. This situation surprised him. This surprise caused him to miss the best opportunity and fall into the trap of the level 5 puppet formation. Chapter 1586. Outside the True Sword sect, many people were waiting. Time passed slowly, but they didn't see the figure of the third emissary. Outside the main hall, the elders were extremely nervous. Sword origin surged in their bodies. They were ready to attack at any time, even if it meant risking their lives. "Come in." Suddenly, a familiar and indifferent voice sounded in their ears. Everyone trembled and excitedly rushed into the main hall of the sect. Their sect leader was still sitting on the sect leader's seat. He was playing with an interspatial ring in his hand. Below him was a corpse covered in a golden robe. "He's dead." The elders were all dumbfounded. The third emissary of the Battle King sect, who was said to be invincible under the 7-star saint realm, had turned into a corpse on the ground. The sect leader, whom they thought they couldn't defeat, was sitting on the sect leader's seat, unharmed. What was going on? What exactly had happened in the process? Countless questions surged in their minds. "I told you, I have a trump card," Chu Mu said, neither quickly nor slowly. He didn't feel arrogant or complacent from killing the Battle King sect's third envoy. After a long time, the elders came back to their senses. "Sect leader, this is too scary." The second elder smiled bitterly. He felt that his heart couldn't handle this kind of challenge. "Sect leader, what happened just now?" The third elder couldn't help but ask. "He attacked me, but he couldn't kill me. I'm alive, but he couldn't stop the level 5 puppet array. So he died," Chu Mu said simply. The third emissary of the Battle King sect was so strong because he was a cultivator of the primordial spirit Tao. Chu Mu added, "A cultivator of the primordial spirit Tao." The elders were shocked. There were 3 paths of cultivation: Qi cultivation, body cultivation, and spirit cultivation. When one reached the saint realm, they would cultivate origin energy, body cultivation, and primordial spirit cultivation. They would focus on whichever path they were good at. Most cultivators walked the origin energy path. A few of them were good at the body cultivation and walked the body cultivation path. A few of them were good at the soul cultivation and walked the primordial spirit cultivation path. No matter what Tao one walked, one would need a cultivation technique. For example, a cultivator with a powerful soul would not be able to become a cultivator of the Tao of the primordial spirit if they did not have a suitable primordial spirit cultivation method. Chu Mu was an example. The third emissary of the Battle King sect had an extraordinary soul talent, and he also had a primordial spirit cultivation method, which was why he was able to become a cultivator of the primordial spirit. "Sect leader, If he's a cultivator of the Tao of the primordial spirit, then you. The third elder seemed to have thought of something, and his eyes widened. I'm not a primordial spirit cultivator yet, but I have some trump cards. Chu Mu said, this third emissary is not only a cultivator of the primordial spirit Tao, he is also very outstanding in other aspects. This was because after being surrounded by the level 5 puppet formation, he actually relied on his movement technique and sword technique to continuously dodge and counterattack. He lasted for close to 15 minutes before he was killed. If it were any other peak 6-star martial saints, even if it was an elite like Gu Jinzi, they would not be able to hold on for long. At most, they would die within a few breaths. In other words, even if the third emissary did not use a secret technique to attack the primordial spirit, he could still kill Gu Jinzi. Cultivators of the Tao of the primordial spirit were born with a powerful soul. Their memory and comprehension abilities were extraordinary, and they could comprehend cultivation methods faster than others. It was also easier for them to grasp the essence of cultivation methods and understand them more thoroughly. This was an advantage. Regardless of whether it was sword technique or movement technique, the third emissary of the Battle King sect had cultivated them to a level that others could not reach. He possessed extraordinary strength. Furthermore, cultivators of the Tao of the primordial spirit had powerful primordial spirits, and they could use their primordial spirits more thoroughly. They could use their spiritual power more thoroughly, and it was easier for them to find and grasp the opponent's flaws. Among the cultivators of the 3 paths, cultivators of the Tao of the primordial spirit were the least, but they were also the most powerful and the most feared. They were powerful in almost every aspect. As long as they were willing, they could learn more than others, and their comprehension was deeper than others. This made others feel despair. Time continued to pass, and the third emissary still did not leave the True Sword sect. The True Sword sect was also peaceful, and there were no signs of a battle. This was very confusing. The third emissary of the Battle King sect had died to the rank 5 puppet formation. His space ring became Chu Mu's spoils of war. Chu Mu opened the space ring with some anticipation, hoping to find the third emissary's cultivation method and secret method for attacking the primordial spirit. After some searching, Chu Mu found the third emissary's cultivation method and secret method for attacking the primordial spirit as he wished. However, he was greatly disappointed after reading it. The cultivation method for cultivating the primordial spirit was called the 3 transformations. It was a rank 3 cultivation method for cultivating the primordial spirit. The first transformation was a rank 1, and the third transformation was rank 3. Cultivating the 3 transformations would allow one's primordial spirit to reach the peak of rank 3. Other than being able to cultivate the primordial spirit to the peak of rank 3, the 3 transformations also possessed a special characteristic, which was that the power of the primordial spirit recovered faster. It could be said that every single cultivation method for cultivating the primordial spirit possessed at least one other ability apart from the limit of cultivation. The 3 transformations of the primordial spirit could accelerate the recovery of the power of the primordial spirit. The first transformation was 10%, and the third transformation was 30%. It could be said that every single cultivation method for cultivating the primordial spirit of the same level would recover the power of the primordial spirit at the same speed. In that case, the 3 transformations of the primordial spirit would increase the recovery rate by 10 to 30%. The reason why Chu Mu was disappointed was because the cultivation method for cultivating the primordial spirit was only rank 3. However, his primordial spirit was currently at the peak of rank 2, so it could still be cultivated. It was better than nothing. As for the secret method for attacking the primordial spirit, it was called the soul-piercing needle. It was a rank 3 secret method for attacking the primordial spirit. Both of them were rank 3, and once cultivated to the peak, he would be at the peak of rank 3. Under normal circumstances, the primordial spirit of a peak 6-star martial saint would only be at the peak of rank 3. Without a defensive secret technique for the primordial spirit, it would be impossible to resist a peak rank 3 primordial spirit attack secret technique. Chu Mu was looking forward to having a higher primordial spirit cultivation method and primordial spirit attack secret technique. At the very least, it should be rank 4. Rank 3 was too low. However, he was also glad that it wasn't rank 4. Otherwise, he would have been facing a rank 4 primordial spirit attack. It's better than nothing, Chu Mu thought to himself. He could cultivate the 3 transformations of the mystic thoughts and the soul-piercing needle now. He could even use these 2 primordial spirit secret techniques as the secret techniques of the True Sword sect for the elders to cultivate. In the future, he could also let disciples with soul talents cultivate them. However, before that, Chu Mu had to cultivate them first. After instructing Gu Luankong and the other 2 to equip themselves with heavenly puppets and guard the True Sword sect, Chu Mu entered the mystic Yang Sword world. In the Boundary Steel Hall, he prepared to cultivate the 3 transformations of the mystic thoughts. He also planned to cultivate the soul-piercing needle. However, there was a sequence between the 2. The strength of the primordial spirit was the foundation. Everything else came after that. Gu Luankong and the other 2 were equipped with heavenly puppet. Each of them had the strength of a peak 7-star martial saint. When the 3 of them worked together, they could fight against an 8-star martial saint. As for the 3 rank 6 puppets, Chu Mu temporarily handed them over to Gu Luankong. When necessary, he would release them to form a rank 6 puppet formation. This formation would be able to fight against an 8-star martial saint and protect the True Sword sect against strong enemies. There were few soul talents, but there were still differences between them. For example, Chu Mu, amongst soul talents, was definitely at the top of the class. In the Boundary Steel Hall, he took out the 3 transformations of the mystic thoughts and started to comprehend it. His strong comprehension allowed him to comprehend it without any difficulties. In just half a day, he had comprehended the mysteries of the 3 transformations of the mystic thoughts and started to cultivate it. The Boundary Steel Hall was filled with dense and pure Yang Qi. The Yang Qi could refine Yuan Li Qi and primordial spirit. It was very magical. Chu Mu started to cultivate the 3 transformations of the mystic thoughts. First was the first transformation. The first transformation was to revolve the power of the primordial spirit at a unique speed with a unique rhythm to achieve the goal of cultivation. The first transformation was easy. The second transformation wasn't difficult either because Chu Mu's primordial spirit was at the peak of rank 2. However, the third transformation was very difficult. He could only repeat the 3 transformations of the mystic thoughts over and over again to refine the power of the primordial spirit and absorb the Yang Qi from the outside world to refine his primordial spirit. The previous refinement was passive refinement. It was naturally nourished by the Yang Qi. But now, the refinement was through the absorption of the primordial spirit cultivation method. The efficiency had increased by dozens of times. If it was before, Chu Mu still needed 10 years to break through from the peak of rank 2 to rank 3. But with the 3 transformations of the mystic thoughts, the time needed to break through would be shortened by 100 or even 1,000 times. The mystic thought's second transformation was repeated over and over again, constantly absorbing the Yang Qi to refine the primordial spirit. If the third emissary of the warlord sect was still alive and knew about this, he would be extremely envious. Chu Mu could feel his primordial spirit condensing at a slow speed. Chu Mu was immersed in the cultivation of the 3 transformations of the mystic thoughts while the outside world was bustling with noise and excitement. Half a day had passed, but the third emissary of the warlord sect still hadn't come out of the True Sword sect. This made the saint-level experts of the various forces who were hiding in the surroundings extremely surprised. When the third emissary entered the Black Cloud sect, he left in less than an hour without any injuries. Why did he take so long to enter the True Sword sect? A few saint-level experts who couldn't hold themselves back descended and arrived at the entrance of the True Sword sect. Junior, what did the third emissary of the Warlord sect say to you before? The saint-level experts' attitudes were still considered polite. To pay a visit to the sect master. Facing a saint-level expert, the Nirvana Realm disciples weren't afraid and simply replied, "Pay a visit?" The saint-level experts looked at each other. It seemed that they were being too polite. After all, they had directly barged into the Black Cloud sect. The saint-level experts immediately communicated with each other through voice transmission. In the end, they discussed and decided to pay a visit to the sect master of the True Sword sect. Of course, the visit was fake. They wanted to see what was going on. Thus, they requested a visit from the disciples guarding the entrance, hoping that they would pass on their message. The disciples guarding the entrance naturally didn't refuse and passed on their request. Chapter 1587. Not long after, the disciple who went to report came back. "Seniors, I'm truly sorry. The sect master is currently receiving an important guest, so it's not convenient for him to see you." The disciple cupped his hands and said respectfully. There was nothing wrong with his expression. Receiving an important guest, being rejected, the saints didn't get angry. The current True Sword sect's strength was unfathomable. They didn't dare to make an enemy out of the True Sword sect. Nodding, they left, but the truth didn't go far. "How is it?" The other saints came over and asked. "The sect master of the True Sword sect is receiving an important guest." The saints answered honestly. Receiving an important guest. Everyone fell silent. It had been half a day since the third envoy of the Battle King sect had entered the True Sword sect, but he still hadn't left. After all, they were sure that the Battle King sect had come to take revenge on the True Sword sect. But why hadn't there been any commotion yet? The words, "receiving an important guest," made everyone's imagination run wild. This important guest should be the third envoy of the Battle King sect. Calling him an important guest. Could it be that the True Sword sect is planning to submit to the Battle King sect? Thus, countless guesses appeared. But in the end, they all thought that the True Sword sect was planning to submit to the Battle King sect. If that wasn't the case, why would they call him an important guest? They definitely didn't know that this was just a fabrication by the second elder. Because Chu Mu was in seclusion for the time being, he was in charge of the sect's affairs. In order to avoid the Battle King sect's next round of revenge and not cause too much commotion, he came up with this excuse on the spur of the moment. They would never have thought that this was a trap set up by the second elder on the spur of the moment. No matter how stubborn they are, they still have to submit in the end. This was what a disciple who left the True Sword sect said. It also represented the thoughts of many other disciples who left the True Sword sect. After all, they had left the True Sword sect when it was in danger. If the True Sword sect had been wiped out by the Battle King sect, they wouldn't have felt any pressure. They would even feel that they were wise to avoid disaster. However, not only had the True Sword sect not been destroyed, they had instead annihilated more than 100 saint-level experts from the War King school, displaying astonishing strength. The disciples who had left all felt extremely uncomfortable. It turned out that the True Sword sect had such strength, but they deliberately did not let them know. They hid it, causing them to make the wrong judgment and be mocked by others. After being ridiculed, those who were originally calm became angry from embarrassment. They even became dissatisfied with the True Sword sect, which gradually turned into hatred. The ridicule of others and the torment in their hearts had not been easy for them. Now that they heard that the True Sword sect was going to submit to the Warlord sect, they all heaved a sigh of relief. It was as if they had made the right choice. Otherwise, they would have to submit to the Warlord sect right now. In the end, the True Sword sect was unable to withstand the pressure from the Battle King sect. Some people shook their heads and sighed. The Battle King sect is unstoppable. From the looks of it, The strength of the true sword sect is only SOSO. If they don't submit, they will only be exterminated. Between life and death, I believe many people know what to choose. Should I say that the true sword sect knows when to advance and retreat, or are they afraid of death? There were all kinds of discussions. Third brother is indeed powerful. He immediately subdued the true sword sect. In the Battle King sect, the envoys were all impressed. Why hasn't the third brother returned yet? The second envoy was puzzled. He is interested in the true sword sect's leader. He must be trying to figure it out. The first envoy said, "Sometimes the third brother's temperament is like that of a child." For the time being, they did not suspect anything. They also thought that the true sword sect was really going to submit to the Battle King sect. This was the situation that the elders of the true sword sect wanted to see the most. They wanted to drag it out as long as possible. Although there would be a day when the truth would be revealed sooner or later, the longer they dragged it out, the better. It would be best if they could drag it out until the leader came out of seclusion. Otherwise, without the leader, the elders would not feel confident. It was not because they were useless, but because they were under a lot of pressure. Their personal life and death did not mean anything, but the survival of the true sword sect was the most important thing. If they thought too much, the pressure would increase. That was the difference between being an elder and not being a leader. The leader of a sect had to have the ability to control the entire sect. He would be the backbone of the sect and would be able to calm the hearts of the people. However, the elders were only responsible for one aspect of the sect. They had to think about different things. Very quickly, a day passed. The third envoy of the Battle King sect still did not appear. One day was actually nothing. No one suspected anything. 2 days. 3 days. 4 days. On the 5th day, the third envoy of the Battle King sect still did not appear. This attracted the attention of the Battle King sect. Why hasn't the third brother returned yet? The second envoy was confused. Logically speaking, no matter how curious the third envoy was, a few days should be enough. Each of them had a life plate left behind by the fusion of their spirit and blood essence. Unfortunately, they were not in the Battle King sect. They were in another place that they could not reach. Only the leader knew about it. However, the leader had not appeared for a few days already. It seemed that he had left the Battle King sect temporarily and had not returned. They could only continue to wait until the leader returned. Inside the true sword sect, the disciples did not go out. However, there were many discussions because the news from the outside world had spread. Impossible. How could the leader submit to the Battle King sect? I don't believe it either. There were all kinds of discussions. Almost all the disciples believed that the leader would not submit to the Battle King sect. However, there must be a reason for the news to spread. However, because the leader had not appeared for a long time, the disciples were worried. Fortunately, the elders had spread the news that the leader was in emergency seclusion. Emergency seclusion meant that he was about to make a breakthrough in a certain aspect. In the Boundary Monument Palace, Chu Mu had been cultivating the third transformation technique. Cultivating the primordial spirit would consume the primordial spirit's power. Therefore, it was impossible to cultivate continuously. However, Chu Mu was in the Boundary Monument Palace. Under the rich and pure yang qi, he could continuously absorb and refine it. With the black gold mask's 30% boost, his primordial spirit's recovery speed was extremely fast. This allowed him to cultivate even more. Cultivating over and over again, and on the 5th day, Chu Mu felt that his primordial spirit had reached the peak. It had reached the true limit of the peak of the 2nd level. Next, it was time to break through. After 5 days of cultivation, Chu Mu continued to absorb and accumulate the yang qi. After a certain amount, he began to break through. Break, break, break. In the spiritual world, 3 sounds rang out. Each sound was louder than the previous, and each sound was stronger than the previous. It was like a thunderclap. The primordial spirit's power continued to rotate, carrying the rich and pure yang qi. It was like the roar of the sea and the impact of the collapse of the mountains. In an instant there was a pop. It was as if something had been broken. The third transformation technique entered the third transformation technique. In an instant, Chu Mu felt his spiritual world tremble. There seemed to be a layer of black light above his primordial spirit. Immediately, his primordial spirit seemed to become very light. It almost flew up, but in an instant, it became heavy and fell down. It was more stable and solid. The luster around his primordial spirit became a long and heavy pure black. The primordial spirit's light of the black iron primordial spirit was black. It went from the initial faint black to a pure and heavy black. It had experienced 3 levels of change. The light of the primordial spirit now represented that Chu Mu's primordial spirit had broken through from the peak of the 2nd level to the 3rd level. The reason why he could break through so quickly was that Chu Mu's primordial spirit was very strong. The peak of the 2nd level was comparable to a 3rd level primordial spirit. The 2nd was the endless pure yang qi in the boundary steel hall. The 3rd was the mystic thought's 3rd transformation technique. All 3 were indispensable. Of course, Chu Mu's primordial spirit had to be at the peak of the 2nd level. Once the primordial spirit broke through, the feeling was immediately different. His 6 senses rose sharply. His comprehension and other aspects were also enhanced. I've finally broken through. The 3rd level of the primordial spirit. It's a pity that I can't improve quickly from now on, Chu Mu said. He was now at the early stage of the 3rd level of the primordial spirit. There were still 3 levels after that. The middle stage, the late stage, and the peak stage. Every small improvement was not easy. If he did not have a primordial spirit cultivation technique, it would take at least decades or centuries. With a powerful primordial spirit cultivation technique, he could shorten the time by several times or even more. The early stage of the 3rd level primordial spirit, with its own uniqueness and the 30% boost from the black gold mask, was comparable to a late stage of the 3rd level primordial spirit. Chu Mu took out the primordial spirit attack secret technique, the soul-piercing needle, and began to study it. The cultivation method of the 3rd level primordial spirit attack secret technique, the soul-piercing needle, was to cultivate the power of the primordial spirit into the shape of a needle. The process was not complicated, but it required a lot of patience to condense the power of the primordial spirit into the shape of a needle. Once the needle was formed, the next step would be to continuously refine and nurture it until it reached the limit. During the attack, the power of the soul-piercing needle would be stimulated and the power of the primordial spirit would be consumed. When released, the needle would pierce into the opponent's spiritual world and go straight for the primordial spirit. The power of the primordial spirit was different from the power of the soul. The power of the soul could be said to be a derivative of the power of the primordial spirit. The power of the soul could be released at will, but the power of the primordial spirit was contained within the primordial spirit. Only a primordial spirit attack secret technique could release it, and only a primordial spirit defense secret technique could defend against it. Chu Mu had a 3rd level primordial spirit, so it was not difficult for him to cultivate the soul-piercing needle. In less than half a day, a black needle was successfully condensed and suspended above the head of the primordial spirit. The current soul-piercing needle was only at the level of a 1st level primordial spirit. With the boost from Chu Mu's 3rd level primordial spirit, it could threaten a 2nd level primordial spirit. The next step was to refine the soul-piercing needle and raise its grade until it reached the peak of the 3rd level. This would require some time. Chu Mu came out of seclusion. Chapter 1588. Sect Leader, you're finally out of seclusion. The 2nd elder heaved a sigh of relief when he saw Chu Mu appear. He had been under a lot of pressure for the past 5 days. It was the same for the other elders. How's the situation? Chu Mu smiled and asked. The 2nd elder immediately told him everything that had happened in the past few days. Chu Mu listened quietly. Sect leader, now that you're out of seclusion, you can clarify things to the outside world. The second elder said. What he said was just a temporary measure. A misunderstanding is a misunderstanding. There's no need to care about it. Chu Mu said nonchalantly, "This time, I'll teach you a secret primordial spirit cultivation technique that can allow you to cultivate up to the peak of level 3 primordial spirit. In addition, there's also a secret primordial spirit attack technique that you can cultivate. Lastly, there's a secret primordial spirit defense technique that I obtained from the ancient sacred city." Hearing Chu Mu's words, the elders were shocked. The secret primordial spirit cultivation technique, the secret primordial spirit attack technique, and the secret primordial spirit defense technique were each more precious than the other. They knew that the secret primordial spirit cultivation technique and the secret primordial spirit attack technique must have belonged to the third envoy of the warlord sect. Now that he was dead, it became Chu Mu's possession. If Chu Mu could defend against the third envoy's primordial spirit attack, then the secret primordial spirit defense technique must be powerful. Chu Mu was not stingy. He directly passed down the 3 secret primordial spirit cultivation techniques to every martial sage. As for those cultivators below the martial sage level, they could not cultivate them because they did not have primordial spirit. My suggestion is to first cultivate the 3rd rotation of the mystic will. Your primordial spirits have never been cultivated before and have always been refined and improved naturally. Therefore, they contain a lot of potential. The primordial spirit cultivation method will fully develop your accumulated potential and allow your primordial spirits to have an obvious improvement in a short period of time. Chu Mu said, "After your primordial spirits have stabilized, you can cultivate the secret primordial spirit attack or defense techniques." "Thank you, Sect Master." The elders were extremely grateful. The 4 enslaved by Chu Mu were the same. How precious were these Yuan spirit secret techniques! Furthermore, there were 3 of them at once, and they were all complete in terms of offense and defense. The primordial spirit defense secret technique that Chu Mu had passed down was naturally the rainbow ring. However, he had only taught them the first 3 rings. Even if they knew about the remaining 4 rings, they would not be able to cultivate them. Next, Chu Mu compiled the 3 Yuan spirit secret techniques and stored them in the scripture pavilion of the True Sword sect in the profound Yang Sword Hall. They would be passed down as secret techniques of the True Sword sect. In the future, loyal disciples of the True Sword sect would be able to cultivate them after breaking through to the eternal ancient realm. The last 4 rings of the Rainbow Ring were also compiled and stored away. There was a scripture pavilion in the True Sword sect's mountain gate. It was mainly used to store cultivation techniques that were not that important. As for the important ones, such as the sword truth compiled by Chu Mu and the sword techniques and Yuan spirit secret techniques brought from the myriad sword steel, they were stored in the profound Yang Sword Hall. It was safer. As for the great elder, Chu Mu went to take a look before leaving the profound Yang Sword world. The great elder was in a critical period. He had already stabilized and was beginning to break through to the 4th level of the primordial spirit. He did not have a secret primordial spirit cultivation technique, so he could only rely on the most primitive methods to temper his primordial spirit. He might be able to break through in a few months, or it might take a few years. Gu Luankong and the other 2 naturally obtained the cultivation method of the Mystic Thought 3 Transformations and the Soul Piercer. The Mystic Thought 3 Transformations was especially suitable for them. Because they were only at the 1st level of the primordial spirit, it would take a long time for them to reach the peak of the 3rd level. Chu Mu came out of seclusion to preside over the sect's affairs. The 3 of them once again entered the profound Yang Sword Hall to cultivate in seclusion. At the moment, there was no need for them to do anything. Everything was peaceful. Those who needed to cultivate cultivated, and those who needed to do things did things. In the blink of an eye, 10 days had passed since the third envoy of the warlord sect entered the True Sword sect. On the 11th day, some people realized that the third envoy of the warlord sect had not appeared since that day. Puzzling, it was very puzzling. Why didn't the third envoy of the warlord sect appear again? Could it be that the third envoy of the warlord sect had died in the True Sword sect? Was it just a rumor that the True Sword sect had submitted to the warlord sect? Immediately, some people began to investigate. Unfortunately, it was difficult to find any useful information. They did not know that the body of the third envoy of the warlord sect had already become food for the ancient spirit beasts in the profound Yang Sword world. Why hasn't the third brother returned yet? In the warlord sect, the second envoy frowned. No, I have to go and take a look. He had the best relationship with the third envoy. He almost treated the third envoy as his own brother. At this moment, the sect master of the warlord sect returned. All the envoys who were still in the warlord sect were summoned. The third envoy's life jade has shattered. The person sitting on the throne spoke. His voice was very calm, and one could not tell whether he was happy or sad. 10 days ago, as soon as the words were spoken, the expressions of all the envoys changed. Especially the second envoy's face, it was incomparably ugly. 10 days ago, the third envoy's life jade had shattered. That meant that the third envoy had died 10 days ago. 10 days ago, the third emissary entered the True Sword sect and didn't leave. It was at that time that he died in the True Sword sect. The news about the True Sword sect submitting to the Battle King sect was just a rumor, a conspiracy of the True Sword sect. Sect Master, please allow me to fight the True Sword sect. I want to annihilate the entire True Sword sect. The second envoy gritted his teeth and said. The anger in his heart was like a volcano erupting. The third emissary had actually died in the True Sword sect 10 days ago. As for him, he had only just found out about it. He had been deceived for 10 whole days. 10 whole days. The hatred in his heart was like an endless river. The True Sword sect is very strange, said the sect master of the warlord sect. No matter how many schemes they have, in front of absolute power, they are useless, said the second envoy. He was determined to annihilate the True Sword sect to avenge the third envoy. Sect Master, I have neglected my duty. I did not truly understand the True Sword sect's methods and caused the death of the third envoy. I will also go to the True Sword sect, said the seventh envoy. Sect Master, please allow us to annihilate the True Sword sect. The other envoys all begged. They knew very well that the True Sword sect and the Warlord sect were already mortal enemies. They had been trained since they were young and had stood out from thousands of others. They were competitors, but they also had a brotherly relationship. Since the Warlord sect and the True Sword sect were mortal enemies, they would fight sooner or later. Instead of splitting up and going to the True Sword sect one by one, they might as well go together and annihilate the True Sword sect in one fell swoop. They would let people know how powerful the Warlord sect was and the consequences of opposing them. The first envoy didn't say anything. He just stood there, but his eyes were flickering with sword intent. You are allowed to go to the True Sword sect and annihilate them, said the sect master of the Warlord sect. However, the saints of the other sects will be the vanguard. Yes. The envoys all bowed and turned around. They quickly left the Warlord sect and rose into the air. At the same time, they sent messages to the saints of the other sects who had submitted to them. After that, the first envoy waved his hand and 100-meter-long golden flying ship appeared. The 15 envoys entered the flying ship one by one. The flying ship started moving and its speed increased rapidly. It flew in the direction of the True Sword sect. The 15 envoys of the Warlord sect didn't try to hide their movements. The saints hiding around the Warlord sect immediately knew about them. The Battle King sect had displayed a total of 1 patriarch and 18 envoys. Every single one of the envoys had the strength of a late-stage 6-star saint. The top 3 envoys were even more mysterious. The second envoy had displayed the terrifying strength of a mid-level 7-star saint with 3 punches. Now, the 11th and 12th envoy had died outside the True Sword sect. The third envoy hadn't shown up after entering the True Sword sect. Many people were suspicious. Now, the Warlord sect had sent out the remaining 15 envoys. What were they going to do? After analyzing the situation, many people came to a shocking conclusion. The third envoy of the Warlord sect hadn't left the True Sword sect because he was already dead. He had died not long after entering the True Sword sect. Of course, dead people couldn't leave. If that was true, then the Warlord sect must have been completely infuriated. That was why they had sent out the remaining 15 envoys to the True Sword sect. They wanted to annihilate the True Sword sect. If that was true, then the True Sword sect had other secrets. The news spread like a storm. It was even faster than the flying ships of the Warlord sect. Immediately, the experts of many sects and factions moved. They hurried to the True Sword sect as quickly as possible. Some people who were closer to the True Sword sect arrived first. They didn't enter the True Sword sect. Instead, they hid outside and waited. This time, not only were there saints from third-rate, quasi, and second-rate forces, but there were also many saints from quasi-first-rate and first-rate forces. Sect Master, something bad has happened. Elder Yun Feng hurriedly found Chu Mu. He was in charge of collecting information, so he naturally knew about the situation. What is it? Chu Mu wasn't in a hurry. The remaining 15 envoys of the Warlord sect have all moved out. They're rushing over with ill intentions, said Elder Yun Feng. They're finally here. Chu Mu wasn't surprised at all. He knew that this day would come sooner or later. It was just a matter of how long it would take. Seeing that Chu Mu wasn't in a hurry at all and was even looking forward to it, Yun Feng was speechless. At the same time, he gradually calmed down and felt ashamed. They were both 1-star saints, but the sect master was calm and composed, while he was panicking. They couldn't compare. Gather all the elders. Prepare to receive the 15 envoys of the Warlord sect. Chu Mu said with a smile as if he had everything under control. This time, just like the previous 2 times, we'll make them unable to return. We'll also let them understand that our True Sword sect is not to be casually provoked. Yes, Sect Master. Yun Feng took a deep breath. Yun Feng sucked in a deep breath and said in a low voice. Hearing Chu Mu's words, for some reason, his heartbeat became even stronger and faster. His blood flowed even faster. His entire body was filled with energy that surged like a great river, endless and unending. Chapter 1589. In the sky above True Sword sect, Chu Mu stood alone in the air. Apart from the Great Elder, the other elders couldn't interfere in this battle. The Great Elder was in seclusion. Even the strongest second elder couldn't fight against the weakest envoy, let alone the others. The weakest of Battle King Sect's 18 envoys had the strength of a 6-star late-stage saint rank. Even Chu Mu himself could not contend against them. It had to be said that this was True Sword sect's current predicament, a very awkward situation. Although the elders didn't come out to fight, they had their own task. They had to organize the disciples and protect them. After all, these disciples were truly loyal to the True Sword sect. They were worthy of being nurtured. In the future, the True Sword sect would have to rely on them to become stronger. Inside the True Sword sect, the elders and disciples all looked outside. Their gazes were focused on Chu Mu's back. His lonely back had an unparalleled aura. Time passed slowly. The atmosphere became more and more tense. In the distance, black figures began to appear. They were gathering from all directions at a rapid speed. So many flying ships! Has the entire Battle King sect moved out? The expressions of the saint-level beings lurking around the True Sword sect all changed drastically. The black figures gathered together, forming a black mass. It was like a line between the sky and the water. They were rapidly approaching. 1 ship, 2 ships, 3 ships. Chu Mu's pupils shrank. He was surprised. He thought that there were only 15 envoys from the Battle King sect. Now, it seemed that there were more than that. Each flying ship was 100 meters long, led by a golden flying ship. There were 50 to 60 flying ships of different colors and shapes around the golden flying ship, as if they were escorting the golden flying ship in a mighty formation. Wherever the flying ships passed, the yuan qi of heaven and earth would become chaotic. Scratches were left in the void. The True Sword sect is finished. The Battle King sect is furious this time. Sect Master. The elders and disciples of the True Sword sect clenched their fists. 600-meter-long flying ships had all arrived and stopped a few thousand meters away from Chu Mu. Each flying ship was emitting a chilling aura fluctuation, bringing an incomparably powerful pressure that was suffocating. The doors of the flying ships opened one after another, and figures flew out one after another. There were a total of 15 figures flying out of the golden flying ship. The other flying ships had at least 5 to more than a dozen figures flying out. Each of them was a Saint Realm expert. They were all low-level Saint Realm experts and mid-level Saint Realm expert. There were about 500 to 600 Saint-level experts on the flying ship. Every Saint-level expert exuded a powerful and chaotic aura, stirring up the chi of heaven and earth and shaking the void. Thinking about it, the scene of 500 to 600 low-level and mid-level Saint-level experts standing together was very shocking. Their aura caused a huge vortex to appear in the sky, spinning chaotically. It gave people the feeling that the sky was about to collapse. The True Sword sect only had 1 person, while the Battle King sect had 500 to 600 people. There was a huge disparity in numbers. The True Sword sect only had 1 person, who was an early-stage 1-star saint. On the other hand, the Battle King sect had 500 to 600 people. The weakest one was a 1-star saint, while the Battle King sect had many 6-star saints. There was even the second envoy of the Battle King sect and the mysterious first envoy. How could the True Sword sect fight against the Battle King sect with such a huge difference? Everyone thought that the True Sword sect was finished this time. However, the sect master of the True Sword sect is truly bold. A 1-star martial saint dares to face 500 to 600 martial saints by himself. If it were me, I would definitely feel weak in the knees. Someone praised. This is a foolish method. He overestimates himself and is seeking his own death, someone else said with disdain. It didn't matter if others were praising or disdaining him. It had nothing to do with Chu Mu. He was only doing what he should do. Moreover, he was confident in this. The worst thing that could happen was that he would use up 1 chance. However, Chu Mu's gaze swept over them. His sharp eyes flickered with a faintly discernible glint as he swept his gaze over the 560 sacred rank experts. Perhaps I don't need to use up 1 chance, Chu Mu thought to himself. In his eyes, out of the 506 martial saints, the strongest was a 7-star martial saint. One of them was an ordinary-looking middle-aged man, while the other was a tall and strong man who looked like an iron tower. As for the rest, the strongest was only a 6-star martial saint. That tower-like giant should be the second emissary of the Battle King sect who had defeated the 7-star saint-level expert of the Sun Valley with 3 punches. Looking at his body, which contained incomparably powerful strength, he should be a cultivator of the Saint Body Tao. As for the seemingly normal middle-aged man, he made Chu Mu feel a strong sense of danger. He was even stronger than the Iron Tower-like giant man, much stronger. Sword Saint, as a sword saint with profound attainments in Sword Tao, even if his cultivation was weak, Chu Mu could still feel a sliver of sword aura from this normal middle-aged man. It was a very pure sword aura, and he determined that he was a sword saint. The ones that Chu Mu cared about were the first and second emissaries of the Battle King sect. He didn't care about the others. Although he didn't care about them, there were too many of them. It would be troublesome to deal with them. He had to spend more time. It seems like I might have to use the heavenly puppets this time, Chumu thought to himself. Luckily, he had already informed Gul Wankong and the other two. They were armed with heavenly puppets and hidden within the true sword sect. They were ready to attack at any time. The heavenly puppets were at the peak of the 7-star saint realm. Their speed was shocking. They arrived in the blink of an eye. You are the sect leader of the true sword sect. The first emissary looked at Chu Mu and said, You are very brave. Thank you. Chu Mu smiled and said, No matter how brave you are, you will die if you dare to kill the people of the Battle King sect. The second emissary's voice was like thunder. It rumbled in everyone's ears. We don't know who will die yet. Chu Mu wasn't afraid at all. However, I have to thank you. The true sword sect is in a period of development. We need a lot of resources. Since you are sending them over, the true sword sect will accept them. Chu Mu's words stunned everyone. Even the first and second emissaries of the Battle King sect were stunned. To put it simply, this group of people from the Battle King sect, these 500 to 600 saint-level experts, were here to deliver themselves to the true sword sect. They would all die, and after they died, their treasures would become the true sword sect's spoils of war, contributing resources to the true sword sect's development. Such words were completely wild ravings, yet they were said by Chu Mu in such a calm tone. It made it impossible for others to describe what kind of feeling it was. They only felt that their hearts were extremely complicated. Good. Just based on his boldness, whether he is arrogant or confident, I will remember him. A high-level Saint Realm expert who was hiding in the surroundings couldn't help but say, Sect Master. Within the true sword sect, the elders and disciples were indescribably excited. In an instant, Chu Mu's figure was like a brand that fell into their hearts and souls, never to be erased. The Battle King sect's sacred rank experts all let out angry expressions. Chu Mu's words meant that he was treating them as prey, as food. They were all sacred rank experts after all. How could they be looked down upon like this? Very good. I hope you can still be so unyielding in the future. The second emissary of the Battle King sect sneered. Attack. Capture everyone from the true sword sect alive. I will crush them one by one in front of their sect master. The second emissary of the War King sect reached out and clenched his fist, creating a series of explosions. A cruel and bloodthirsty smile appeared on his face, sending chills down people's spines. Chu Mu waved his hand and released his puppet. The puppets have appeared. 27 puppets can form a total of 3 puppet arrays. No, it's not 27 puppets. It's 30 puppets, 3 more than last time. Not only 3 more, but each of the 3 extra puppets has the strength of a 6-star saint. Immediately, the eyes of the 30 puppets lit up. They moved quickly and formed 4 puppet formations in the blink of an eye. The Level 3 puppet array, Level 4 puppet array, Level 5 puppet array, and Level 6 puppet array respectively had the strength of a 5-star saint, a 6-star saint, a 7-star saint, and an 8-star saint. Next, Chu Mu released his sword domain, enveloping most of the saints who were charging at him. His primordial spirit had reached the early grade 3 stage. Because of the strength of his soul and the 30% boost from the black gold mask, his primordial spirit was comparable to a late grade 3 primordial spirit. It was much stronger than when he was at the peak of grade 2. As a result, his sword domain was strengthened as well. It originally covered an area of 3,000 meters, but now it had increased to 4,000 meters. An area of 1,000 meters could cover more saint. After all, they weren't inanimate objects. They wouldn't foolishly stay in one place without moving. However, the saints who were covered by Chu Mu's sword domain, those who weren't above the 5-star saint level, all felt their bodies tremble. They were restrained by an invisible force. It was difficult for them to move. Their strength and speed were obviously affected. This was especially true for the 4-star saint level and low-level saint level expert. They felt it the most obvious. Their strength decreased by 30 to 40%. As for the 5-star Saint level experts, they had a greater resistance. Their strength decreased by about 10 to 20%. As for the 6-star Saint level experts, they immediately circulated their own strength and forcibly broke free from the binding force. They were no longer affected by it. At the same time, white snowflakes surrounded Chu Mu. There were more than 500 snowflakes in total. They floated in the air,